Chapter 1460. Usually, an outer court disciple who had just entered the sect would not have many merit points. However, when the inner court disciple thought that no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat, he pulled himself together and served Duan Lingtian, the customer, seriously. "Don't worry, junior brother. The treasures I have here are absolutely honest. This dried branch looks quite special. It's not bad to buy it to make a fire." Duan Lingtian picked up a dried branch from the stall and muttered to himself. This dried branch was one of the materials that Hualao had his eyes on. Naturally, this material was not as good as the Nuwa stone fragment. However, Duan Lingtian was still shocked when he saw two materials that could repair the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda in an inner court disciple's stall. Buy it to make a fire? When the inner court disciple heard Duan Lingtian's words, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Then, he said solemnly, "Junior brother, don't underestimate this thing. It's not that simple." "Not that simple? I really can't tell." Duan Lingtian pursed his lips. He had a look of disbelief on his face. "If it's too expensive, I won't buy it. I'll go somewhere else to look." After he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian turned around and prepared to leave. "Junior brother, I'm not lying to you." When the inner court disciple saw that Duan Lingtian was about to leave, he immediately became anxious. He had not opened his stall for a long time. Now that he finally had a spendthrift, naturally, he would not let him go so easily. "Then, why don't you tell me what's so special about it?" Duan Lingtian asked nonchalantly. "This thing looks like a dried branch, but it's not something that can be burned by just any kind of fire. There are many one-star saint refinement masters in the inner court. However, even the flames that they use to refine weapons and pills can't burn it." The inner court disciple said seriously. "Really?" Duan Lingtian pretended to be surprised and asked. "Of course it's true." The inner court disciple hurriedly said, "Junior brother, if you're unwilling, you can find a one-star saint refinement master to come over. Let's not talk about those who are far away. Even on the first floor of the Merit Pavilion, there must be one-star saint refinement masters. As long as you pay him a small amount of merit points, I don't think he will refuse to experiment for you." Duan Lingtian frowned and seemed to be in a difficult position. After a long while, under the expectant gazes of the inner court disciples, he relaxed his brows. "All right, I believe you. I don't have that many merit points to hire a one-star saint refinement master. However, senior brother, I don't have many merit points on hand. If this thing is too expensive, I can't afford it." Duan Lingtian frowned again and said, although he had over 1,000,000 merit points in his hands, he didn't intend to squander them recklessly. Perhaps there was something in the merit pavilion that he couldn't exchange for. He didn't want to waste too many merit points on the first floor of the merit pavilion. "It's not expensive at all." The inner disciple shook his head and said, "Not expensive? How many merit points is that?" Duan Lingtian asked. 5,000 merit points. The instant the inner court disciple's words left his mouth, he stared at Duan Lingtian intently. It was as though he wanted to see how much Duan Lingtian could bear. When he found out that the purple-clad young man before him was an outer court disciple who had just entered the sect, his first thought was that this person did not have any saint stones on him. However, as he thought about it, a thought flashed through his mind. He recalled that many outer court disciples were from the city governor's estate of the 18 cities under the Moon Illumination sect. Those outer sect disciples were generally disciples under the command of the city lords of the various cities. It was normal for these outer court disciples to have 10,000 to 20,000 merit points in their hands. 5,000 merit points? Upon hearing the inner court disciple's words, Duan Lingtian was shocked. At that moment, he didn't even respond to the inner court disciple's words. He turned around and prepared to leave. The moment he turned around, his eyes flashed with shock and disbelief. It was as though he did not expect the withered branch to be so valuable. "Junior brother, I was just joking earlier. 1,000 merit points. You can have 1,000 merit points." The inner court disciple saw Duan Lingtian's expression from the beginning until the end. When he saw Duan Lingtian's expression changed slightly after hearing his price and turned around to leave, he realized that this purple-clad young man did not have many merit points. If he knew that this purple-clad young man was the outer court disciple, Duan Lingtian, who had been the talk of the town for the past 2 days, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. The nouveau riche who had millions of merit points actually turned around and left the moment he heard the price of 5,000 merit points. Are you worthy of the millions of merit points you have? Upon hearing the inner court disciple's voice, Duan Lingtian smirked. However, he did not slow down and continued to walk to the other stall. 500 merit points. 500 merit points. Junior brother, this is really the lowest price I can afford. When the inner court disciple saw that Duan Lingtian had no intention of stopping, he smiled wryly immediately. 500 merit points. All right. However, you must give me another gift. Duan Lingtian also knew that 500 merit points should be the inner court disciple's bottom line. He did not continue to walk forward. Instead, he turned around and returned to the inner court disciple's stall. Gift? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the inner court disciple could not help but frown. He looked at Duan Lingtian suspiciously. However, when he saw that Duan Lingtian was only looking at the withered branch with a pained expression on his face, the inner court disciple's frown disappeared. He cursed in his heart, "How unlucky! I've met a poor bastard." If this inner court disciple's thoughts were spread to the outer court area, he would probably drown in the saliva of a group of outer court disciples. Did he just say that Duan Lingtian, who had millions of merit points, was a poor bastard? Even an inner court elder would not dare to say such a thing, would he? Junior brother, 500 merit points is really the lowest price. As for the gift, I really can't afford it. The inner court disciple shook his head and did not agree to Duan Lingtian's request. Forget it then. I don't want it anymore. Duan Lingtian said impatiently and was about to leave again. Don't. The inner court disciple did not expect Duan Lingtian to be so stubborn. He became anxious. Junior brother, you can have a gift. However, you can only pick the ones that I let you pick. No problem, as long as there's a gift. Duan Lingtian said indifferently. It was as though he did not care about the gift at all. The inner court disciple cursed in his heart again before he pointed at the corner of the stall. Junior brother, just pick one from the pile of things. Duan Lingtian looked at the corner of the stall. It was the corner where the Nuwa stone fragment was located. It can't be? Just these pieces of junk? Duan Lingtian frowned. Senior brother, you're actually exchanging these pieces of junk for merit points? You're cheating me, aren't you? Junior brother, you don't know what's good for you, so don't call them junk. The inner court disciple purposely pulled a long face as he said, Moreover, you said earlier that it's fine as long as there's a gift. You didn't ask for anything? Don't tell me you're regretting it now? I'm really regretting it. Although I know senior brother is stingy, I didn't expect you to be so stingy. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. Junior brother, it's a done deal. Don't go back on your words. The inner court disciple said with a cautious expression. Duan Lingtian sighed and squatted down to look at the corner of the stall. He flipped through the items one by one and casually tossed them aside. When he picked up the Nuwa stone fragment and tossed it aside, his heartbeat quickened. It seems like there's nothing good here, Duan Lingtian said with a frown as he flipped to the end. When the inner court disciple heard Duan Lingtian's words, he could not help but laugh secretly. If there was something good, would he be willing to give it away as a gift? Forget it. I'll just pick one. Duan Lingtian casually picked up the Nuwa stone fragment and said to the inner court disciple, Senior brother, I'll take this broken stone fragment. Is there a problem? Seeing that the stone fragment that Duan Lingtian picked up was a strange stone fragment that was impervious to water and fire, the inner court disciple nodded and said, No problem. However, junior brother, since you've picked it, you're not allowed to go back on your words. I won't. Duan Lingtian shook his head and casually took out a crystal card to transfer 500 merit points to the inner court disciple. The merit points limit in the crystal shell would not be displayed unless the owner activated it with his true energy. Therefore, the inner court disciple did not know that the crystal shell in Duan Lingtian's hand contained more than 7 million merit points. Otherwise, he would definitely be angered to death. I've got the 2 materials. After putting away the two materials, Duan Lingtian felt an inexplicable sense of excitement in his heart. Junior brother, is there anything else you need? After coming to the Merit Pavilion for half a day, a smile appeared on the inner court disciple's face as he completed his first transaction. Senior brother, the things you have here are too expensive. I can't afford them with the remaining merit points I have. I'll go look at other stalls. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. At the same time, he turned around and left to buy a few other materials that could be used to repair the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. As for the other materials, Duan Lingtian repeated the same trick and only spent 1,000 merit points to buy all of them. He displayed the art of bargaining incisively and vividly to the point of perfection. Hualao, with these materials, how much of the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda can be repaired? Duan Lingtian asked. If we don't have the Nuwa stone fragment, not much can be repaired. However, with the Nuwa stone fragment, we can repair the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to about 70%. Hualao said. About 70%? Upon hearing Hualao's words, Duan Lingtian's eyes suddenly lit up. His face was filled with surprise. He did not expect the materials he bought on the first level of the Merit Pavilion to be so helpful in repairing the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It could actually repair the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to about 70%. Before this, the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had only been repaired by 10%. In other words, today's harvest could repair 60% of the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Hualao, based on this speed, the opening of the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is just around the corner, right? Duan Lingtian said to Hualao. He was looking forward to the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He was looking forward to the better cultivation environment and the slower flow of time. Chapter 1461. Just around the corner? When he heard Duan Lingtian's words, Hualao said, "It's too early to say that." These few materials were able to repair 60% of the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It's all thanks to the Nuwa stone fragment. Among them, the Nuwa stone fragment alone was able to repair 40%. Hualao's words were like a bucket of cold water that splashed on Duan Lingtian's head, completely suppressing the excitement in Duan Lingtian's heart. It turned out that the reason these few materials were able to repair so much was all thanks to the Nuwa stone fragment. For a time, the Nuwa stone fragment's position in Duan Lingtian's heart skyrocketed. Hualao, I've heard of a legend that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Sun Wukong, was formed from a five-colored stone that fell when Nuwa was mending the sky. You seem to have said that Sun Wukong was not a native of planet Yanhuang, but was formed from the Nuwa stone of the ancient goddess Nuwa. Is the five-colored stone really so miraculous that it can give birth to a monster like Sun Wukong? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. It's naturally impossible for an ordinary five-colored stone to give birth to a monster like the Horse Protector. The five-colored stone that gave birth to the Horse Protector is the most precious part of the five-colored stone, and it's called five-colored chalcedony. It's blessed by heaven and earth, and it's very beautiful. That's why it could give birth to a monster like the Horse Protector. Hualao said. I see. Duan Lingtian was suddenly enlightened, and then he asked, in that case, the five-colored stone fragment I just obtained is just an ordinary five-colored stone fragment? Yes. Hualao replied. Hualao, this five-colored stone is so miraculous. How will it help me? Duan Lingtian could not help but ask. When he thought about the power of the five-colored stone, Duan Lingtian also hoped that it would bring him some benefits. That would be better than letting the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda consume it. If it was a complete piece of the five-colored stone, it would naturally be of great help to you. However, a fragment of the five-colored stone is of no help to you, Hualao said. Duan Lingtian was slightly disappointed when he heard that. Since he had bought all the materials that he needed, Duan Lingtian left the first level of the Merit Pavilion and headed to the second level. The second level of the city governor's estate of Mount Hill City is where the Saint-grade martial tactics are stored. I wonder if the second level of the Moon Illumination Sect's Merit Pavilion is the same. Duan Lingtian walked into the second floor of the Merit Pavilion and realized that this was not the place where Saint-grade martial techniques were stored. The second floor of the Merit Points Pavilion was where one could exchange merit points for various materials. There were various materials here that could be used for refining weapons, refining medicine, inscribing Dao talismans, and even inscribing saint inscriptions. Naturally, the materials that were placed on the second level of the Merit Pavilion were extremely precious. Nobody in the Moon Illumination sect would be willing to exchange for ordinary materials with merit points. After all, the value of merit points far surpassed saint stones in the Moon Illumination sect. I wonder if there are any rare materials that can be used to repair the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda in the second level of the Merit Pavilion. The moment Duan Lingtian thought about this, he began to look forward to it. Currently, the third level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was already 70% repaired. It was only 30% away from being completely repaired. There was a counter at the entrance of the second level of the Merit Pavilion. An old man was sitting behind the counter. The old man seemed to be dozing off, but he gave off an unusual feeling. When Duan Lingtian passed by the counter, he even felt like he was being watched. Duan Lingtian glanced at the old man vigilantly. He realized that although the old man seemed to be dozing off, he was actually more awake than anyone else. "Leave your spatial ring and go in." Just as Duan Lingtian was looking at the old man vigilantly, the old man opened his sleepy eyes and said nonchalantly. Duan Lingtian nodded and took his spatial ring off before placing it on the counter. He knew that the feeling of being watched earlier was probably due to the old man using his powerful spiritual energy to check the spatial rings on his body to see exactly how many spatial rings he had. Fortunately, the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda wasn't something that the old man's spiritual energy could detect. Duan Lingtian was not worried about the spatial ring that was placed on the counter. It was a spatial ring that had claimed ownership with his blood. Unless he was dead, it would be useless even if someone took it away. They would not be able to take out the things inside. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was not surprised by the rule of handing in one's spatial ring on the second level of the Merit Pavilion. It was obvious that there was no one else guarding the second level of the Merit Pavilion. There were only a few people picking materials there. If one did not hand in one's spatial ring, it was inevitable that someone would secretly put the materials into the spatial ring in an attempt to get away with it and save their merit points. After Duan Lingtian entered the second level of the Merit Pavilion, he greeted Hualao. "Hualao, look around and see if there are any materials that can be used to repair the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda." Under normal circumstances, if he did not take the initiative to greet Hualao, Hualao would not look outside. Duan Lingtian was very satisfied with this. At the very least, this way, Hualao would not pry into his privacy. In this regard, Hualao was very tactful. Duan Lingtian was the owner of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Whether or not Hualao was looking outside through the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he would be the first to know. He knew that Hualao was not looking outside, so he took the initiative to remind him. After walking around the second level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian found a total of more than 10 materials that could be used to repair the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. However, these materials could only be used to repair 10% of the third level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. "It seems that I was really lucky when I was on the first level of the Merit Pavilion," Duan Lingtian sighed to himself. The materials on the second level of the Merit Pavilion were clearly priced and could not be negotiated. The materials that Duan Lingtian found cost a total of 15,000 merit points, which was 10 times more than the merit points he spent on the first level of the Merit Pavilion. Even Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh emotionally at this. Of course, he also knew that such a comparison was meaningless. The most precious Nuwa stone fragment was a gift on the first level of the Merit Pavilion. It did not cost him any merit points at all. After returning to the counter and swiping the 15,000 merit points from his crystal card, Duan Lingtian put on his spatial ring again and put away the materials that he bought on the second level of the Merit Pavilion. "Thank you, Elder." Before he was ready to go to the third level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian thanked the old man behind the counter. This old man's spiritual energy was stronger than anyone he had met before. Of course, the anyone referred to those who had displayed their spiritual energy in front of Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian did not know how strong their spiritual energy was since they had not displayed their spiritual energy before. Because of this, Duan Lingtian guessed that the old man was an inner court elder. I wonder if that elder Dongfang is comparable to him, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Elder Dongfang was the Grand Elder of the Moon Illumination Sect's outer court district, Dongfang Quan. Duan Lingtian had gone to look for him before and had met him once. Since he did not probe Duan Lingtian with his spiritual energy, Duan Lingtian did not know how strong his spiritual energy was. At that time, he had used a 4th grade Saint Stone and 10 5th grade Saint Stones as the price to ask Dongfang Quan to make a statement. It was the statement that was made a few days before the death duel between him and Feng Fan. At that time, many people were surprised by it. It did not cross their minds that the outer court's Grand Elder, Dongfang Quan, would make a statement that he was willing to witness the bet that Duan Lingtian had made. He was also willing to fulfill the bet on behalf of Duan Lingtian after he was killed. Many people had also speculated about the relationship between Duan Lingtian and Dongfang Quan. However, it had never crossed their minds that Duan Lingtian had relied on the 11 Saint Stones to establish a relationship with Dongfang Quan. Of course, it was mostly because of the meaning behind the 11 Saint Stones. Generally speaking, the Saint Stones that circulated in the area around the Moon Illumination Sect, and even the entire 9 Sect Alliances district, were 6th grade Saint Stones at most. Usually, 7th grade Saint Stones could also be produced from 7th grade Saint Stone mines. As for 5th grade Saint Stones, very few people would continue to circulate them even if they flowed into the 9 Sect Alliances district from the outside. Most people would use them for cultivation. It was common knowledge that the higher the grade of Saint Stones, the lower the speed of cultivation. However, the higher the grade of the Saint Stone, the longer one could maintain a high-intensity closed-door cultivation without having to stop halfway to exchange for Saint Stones. There were many martial cultivators and Dao cultivators who missed the best opportunity to break through because they needed to exchange for Saint Stones halfway. Therefore, high-grade Saint Stones were also sought after by martial and Dao cultivators with a profound cultivation base. The higher the cultivation base of martial and Dao cultivators, the longer their closed-door cultivation would be. It was not impossible for them to be in closed-door cultivation for decades or even centuries. Among the 11 Saint Stones that Duan Lingtian had given to Dongfang Quan, there were 10 5th grade Saint Stones and 1 4th grade Saint Stone. 5th grade Saint Stones could only be produced from a 6th grade Saint Stone mine controlled by a 6th-rate force. Although it was rare for it to flow into the 9 Sect Alliances district, it was not like it did not exist. However, 4th grade Saint Stones were extremely rare in the 9 Sect Alliances district. This was because 4th grade Saint Stones could only be produced from a 5th grade Saint Stone mine controlled by a 5th-rate force. The people in the 9 Sect Alliances district would only be able to exchange for 4th grade Saint Stones if they went to the central area of the district controlled by a 5th-rate force. Otherwise, it was almost impossible for the people in the 9 Sect Alliances district to have 4th grade Saint Stones. Of course, there was another possibility. That was, someone from the central area of the district controlled by a 5th-rate force had come to the 9 Sect Alliances district and left a 4th grade Saint Stone there. The fact that Duan Lingtian was able to take out a 4th grade Saint Stone was enough to make Dongfang Quan speculate about his identity. This was also Duan Lingtian's motive. It was also because of this that Dongfang Quan would cooperate with him so readily. Otherwise, why would a mere outer court disciple like him make Dongfang Quan, a dignified Grand Elder of the outer court, help him? It's rare to see such a polite little fellow like you nowadays. A smile appeared on the old man's face. He did not expect that Duan Lingtian would take the initiative to thank him. One must know that most people who came to the second level of the Merit Pavilion would leave after exchanging the materials. Who would care about an old man like him? Little fellow, what's your name? Chapter 1462. I'm Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian said with a smile. You're Duan Lingtian? The old man was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian's reply. Then, he quickly looked at Duan Lingtian's waist. When he saw the outer court disciple's token, his eyes lit up immediately. You're the Outer Court disciple who killed the Earth-ranking powerhouse in the death duel in the Outer Court district yesterday? Elder, you've heard about it too? Duan Ling Tian smiled. He had indirectly admitted to it. Good, good. You're so polite even though you're talented in martial Dao. How rare. The old man had a kind expression on his face. Elder, you flatter me. Duan Ling Tian smiled humbly. My name is Fong Gong. If you have any problems in the future, you can look for me in the Merit Pavilion. If I'm not on duty, you can look for me in the inner court. I'll definitely help you if I can. The old man smiled. Thank you for your kindness, Elder Fong Gong. Duan Ling Tian did not expect the old man to make such a promise. He quickly thanked him and was touched. After all, he only greeted the old man out of politeness. After greeting the old man again, Duan Ling Tian left the second level of the Merit Pavilion and went to the third level of the Merit Pavilion. When he arrived at the third level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Ling Tian saw a counter similar to the one on the second level of the Merit Pavilion. There were two middle-aged men sitting behind the counter. It was obvious they were the people in charge of the third level of the Merit Pavilion. Sensing their spiritual energy, Duan Ling Tian knew their strength was far inferior to Fong Gong, who was on the second level of the Merit Pavilion. These two people's strength is similar to an outer court elder. They're either outer court elders or inner court deacons. Duan Ling Tian could vaguely guess their identities. Put down your spatial ring and go in. One of the middle-aged men glanced at Duan Ling Tian and said nonchalantly. Duan Ling Tian nodded, put down the storage ring, and walked into the third floor of the Merit Pavilion. After entering the third floor of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Ling Tian looked around and couldn't help but be slightly moved. This was because the third floor of the Merit Pavilion was divided into 3 areas, and each of the 3 areas had many good things. The 3 regions were respectively the Elixir region, the Sacred Artifact region, and the Dao Talisman region. Duan Ling Tian first went to the Elixir section and collected a lot of 3-star healing pills and 3-star sensory pills. There were also some 4-star Saint Grade elixirs with extremely high prices. Duan Ling Tian also bought some. However, the amount of merit points he had to spend made his heart ache. The price of a 4-star Saint Grade pill started at 10,000 merit points. Although Duan Ling Tian felt the pinch, he did not find it strange. As far as he knew, the most outstanding alchemist in the Moon Illumination sect was only a 3-star Saint Refinement Master who could refine 3-star Saint Grade elixirs at most. The 4-star Saint Grade elixirs that were even more precious were collected by the Moon Illumination sect through other channels. They had to pay a hefty price for it, so the price was extremely high. The pile of elixirs that Duan Ling Tian bought cost him almost 200,000 merit points in total. After leaving the elixir section, Duan Ling Tian went to the Saint Weapons section. He discovered that most of the Saint weapons here were Earth-rank Saint weapons. Moreover, most of them were Saint weapons that were inscribed with Saint inscriptions. Naturally, Saint weapons that were inscribed with different Saint inscriptions had different prices. Saint weapons that were not inscribed with Saint inscriptions were undoubtedly the cheapest. On the other hand, Saint weapons that were inscribed with 1-star Saint inscriptions were relatively more expensive. Saint weapons that were inscribed with better 1-star Saint inscriptions were even more expensive. Saint weapons that were inscribed with more 1-star Saint inscriptions were even more expensive. Naturally, these Saint weapons were incomparable to Saint weapons that were inscribed with 2-star Saint inscriptions. 2-star Saint inscriptions were also divided into different grades. In this place, Duan Ling Tian saw many Earth-rank Saint weapons that were at the same grade as the 1000 Mass Sword and the Gale Hammer. In fact, there were even Earth-rank Saint weapons that were inscribed with more than 2-star Saint inscriptions. Naturally, the prices were even more exaggerated. The more expensive ones even cost close to 1 million merit points. These Saint weapons are really expensive. However, other than the sun-shooting bow, I also have the 1000 Mass Sword that I obtained from Feng Fan. I don't need to buy any other Saint weapons for the time being. Duan Ling Tian clicked his tongue before he left the Saint Weapons section and went to the Dao Talisman section. The Dao Talisman section sold Dao Talismans. Every type of talisman had a detailed explanation in words. 2-star Golden Energy Talisman. Once activated, it'll form a layer of golden energy defense on the surface of the user's body. It lasts for 15 minutes and can block attacks from martial and Dao cultivators below the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage. It can be broken by martial and Dao cultivators above the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. Duan Lingtian could not help but click his tongue when he saw the description of the Dao Talisman. With this Dao Talisman, even an ordinary person would be able to withstand attacks from martial and Dao cultivators below the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage for 15 minutes and remain unscathed. This is good stuff. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as he looked at the price of the 2-star Golden Energy Talisman. 20,000 merit points? The corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched when he saw the price. It's just a one-time use Dao Talisman, but it's actually worth 20,000 merit points? How is this selling things? This is daylight robbery. Duan Lingtian finally understood why people said that Dao Talisman Master was one of the 2 professions that could earn the most money in the Dao Martial Saint Land. The other professions that could earn the most money were Saint Inscription Masters. After walking around the Dao Talisman section, Dao Talismans appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes one after another. The information about them entered Duan Lingtian's eyes one by one, causing Duan Lingtian to be dazzled. 2-star Divine Strider Talisman. Once used, it can raise the user's speed to the level of a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator for 15 minutes. The Divine Strider Talisman was a life-saving Dao Talisman. Other than the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman, there were many 1-star Divine Strider Talismans on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. However, there were only a few 3-star Divine Strider Talismans. A 1-star Divine Strider Talisman could raise the user's speed to the level of an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator for the same duration as a 2-star Divine Strider Talisman. A 3-star Divine Strider Talisman could raise the user's speed to the level of a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator for the same duration. The speed of a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage martial saint? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as excitement appeared on his face. I must buy a few of these talismans to protect myself. However, when Duan Lingtian saw the price tag of the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, it was as though a bucket of cold water had been poured on him, completely extinguishing his enthusiasm. 300,000 merit points? This is a blatant robbery. Duan Lingtian could not help but curse in a low voice. However, although Duan Lingtian cursed, he still picked up a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. Although he felt the pinch, this was indeed a good item. It could even save his life during a critical moment. 300,000 merit points are gone again. Coupled with a bunch of Saint Grade pills, that's a total of 500,000 merit points. Duan Lingtian finally experienced the feeling of spending money like water. At this moment, he even regretted his generous promise to return half of the bet to the group of outer court deacons and outer court disciples yesterday. Naturally, as soon as the thought of regret rose in his mind, he suppressed it again. No matter what, it was already in the past. Moreover, it was not necessarily a bad thing for him to do. At the very least, he would have formed quite a good relationship with the outer court. Also, this 3-star Golden Energy Talisman can block the attack of a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator for 15 minutes. Although it's slightly cheaper than a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, it's still as ridiculous. Duan Lingtian could not help but click his tongue. A 3-star Dao Talisman was really valuable. However, as a defensive Dao Talisman, the Golden Energy Talisman was slightly cheaper than the Divine Strider Talisman. Not only was the difference between a 3-star Golden Energy Talisman and a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman huge, but there was also a difference of 10,000 merit points between a 2-star Golden Energy Talisman and a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. A 2-star Golden Energy Talisman was worth 20,000 merit points. A 2-star Divine Strider Talisman, on the other hand, was worth 30,000 merit points. A 1-star Dao Talisman is still cheaper. It only costs 2,000 to 3,000 merit points. However, the effect of a 1-star Dao Talisman is not that great. Apart from this 1-star Divine Strider Talisman that can block the attack of an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator, this 1-star Golden Energy Talisman can only block the attack of an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator. To Duan Lingtian, these 1-star Dao Talismans were not very meaningful. If there were defensive Dao Talismans and speed Dao Talismans, naturally, there would be offensive Dao talismans as well. There were so many offensive Dao talismans that Duan Lingtian was dazzled by them. However, Duan Lingtian soon confirmed one thing. The price of the offensive Dao talisman was much higher than the speed Dao talisman, the Divine Strider talisman. Moreover, there were only 2-star offensive Dao talismans on sale at most. There were no 3-star offensive Dao talismans. Once a 2-star offensive Dao talisman was used, it could unleash an attack comparable to a Mastery Saint Rudiment Stage Martial or Dao Cultivator. For Martial or Dao Cultivators below the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage, apart from those who could fight opponents above their level, as long as they were hit by the 2-star offensive Dao talisman, they would be half-crippled even if they did not die. The price of a 2-star offensive Dao talisman is the same as a 3-star Vajra talisman. How ridiculous! Duan Lingtian clicked his tongue. However, he also took one of the 2-star offensive Dao talismans and was prepared to buy one. In just a short while, he had already bought items worth 700,000 merit points on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. Fortunately, there was no one else on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. Otherwise, they would definitely be shocked and envious. However, when Duan Lingtian brought these items to the entrance of the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion to settle the bill, the 2 inner court deacons were still dumbfounded. Are you sure you want to buy these? One of the inner court deacons asked in disbelief. He had no choice but to ask. Even if he was an inner court disciple, it was impossible for him to be so generous. Moreover, the young man in front of him had an outer court disciple's token hanging on his waist. It was obvious he was only an outer court disciple. I'll pay by card, Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly as he swiped 700,000 merit points from the crystal shell. When he swiped it out, he could not help but feel a pang in his heart. When the 2 inner court deacons saw the 700,000 merit points had been transferred to their account, they looked at each other and saw an inexplicable shock in each other's eyes. Chapter 1463. After the 2 inner court deacons witnessed Duan Lingtian leaving the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion, he continued to ascend to the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. His silhouette gradually disappeared before their eyes. Don't tell me he's an inner court elder's last disciple? One of the inner court deacons muttered. Only an inner court elder's last disciple would be able to take out so many merit points for a mere outer court disciple. A last disciple was the last disciple who would no longer take in any disciples. A last disciple was someone who was doted on by everyone. His master valued him so much that his master would not hesitate to use all the resources to nurture him. Even an inner court elder's last disciple might not be able to spend so much. That's 700,000 merit points, not 70,000 merit points. He didn't even bat an eyelid when he obtained them. The other inner court deacon smiled wryly. He was an inner court deacon after all. His position in the Moon Illumination sect was comparable to an outer court elder. However, he only had less than 500,000 merit points in total. It would have been better if they did not compare. Now that they did, it was infuriating. Let alone seeing an outer court disciple casually obtaining 700,000 merit points. He had never even heard of it before. While the 2 inner court deacons were still shocked by Duan Lingtian's generosity, Duan Lingtian had already ascended to the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion, which was also the last level. There was also a counter at the entrance of the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. An old man with a white beard and a white robe was sitting behind the counter. The old man's body was sturdy. As he sat there, he looked like a giant crouching beast. At first glance, he gave off an invisible sense of oppression. When the old man's spiritual energy swept over, Duan Lingtian felt like he had nowhere to hide. What a powerful spiritual energy! It's not inferior to Elder Fang'an at all. Duan Lingtian was secretly shocked. The strength of the white-robed old man's spiritual energy on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion was not inferior to Fang'an, the inner court elder on the 2nd level of the Merit Pavilion. It was apparent that he was also an inner court elder. Are you Duan Lingtian? When Duan Lingtian walked up to the counter and took off his storage ring without waiting for the old man to speak, the burly old man in a white robe opened his mouth and looked at Duan Lingtian with great interest. His eyes were full of amazement. Elder knows me? Duan Lingtian was stunned. He didn't expect that he would be recognized. Could it be that this person also went to the outer area yesterday and saw the life and death duel between him and Fengfan? That old fellow, Fenggan, sent me a voice transmission talisman earlier, saying that you've come to the Merit Pavilion. He praised you so much. Now that I look at it, you're indeed a man of striking appearance. As for the rest, before the white-robed old man could finish his sentence, a powerful aura suddenly rose from his body and swept out. It was as though it had transformed into a gigantic beast that opened its bloody mouth and pounced toward Duan Lingtian, as though it wanted to swallow him into its stomach. Duan Lingtian did not expect the old man to suddenly use his aura to oppress him. He was caught off guard. The powerful aura came head-on, causing him to feel oppressed. However, his body was so strong, and his will was so tenacious that he would not be affected by the old man's aura. No matter how the wind blows, I'll remain unmoved like a mountain. Seeing that his aura did not make the purple-clad young man in front of him take a step back, and there was no change in his expression, a hint of surprise appeared in the white-robed old man's eyes. Looks like that old fellow, Fenggan, did not exaggerate. It was obvious that he acknowledged Duan Lingtian's strength. Elder Fenggan, you flatter me. I'm just an ordinary outer court disciple. Duan Lingtian said humbly. An ordinary outer court disciple? The white-robed old man snorted. I've never seen an ordinary outer court disciple who can defeat Fengfan, who's ranked on the Earth ranking. Moreover, he even killed him. Young man, it's good to be talented. However, if you're too humble, you'll lose the drive that young people should have. Thank you for your guidance, Elder. Duan Lingtian was sweating profusely. Did this elder think that he was not showing off enough? All right, put down your spatial ring and go in. The white-robed old man waved his hand and said, Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. After putting down his spatial ring, he walked into the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. Before he entered, he had already guessed that the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion was where all kinds of Saint-grade martial tactics were stored. This was because this was the last level of the Merit Pavilion. He did not see any Saint-grade martial tactics on the previous 2 levels. One of the main reasons he came this time was the Saint-grade martial tactic. To be more precise, it was the human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactic. Before he came, he already had a target in mind. Therefore, he did not spend too much time choosing after he arrived. Even on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion of the Moon Illumination Sect, there were only a few human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactics. Duan Lingtian's eyes immediately fixed on one of them. To be more precise, he was staring at the Saint token that contained the Saint-grade martial tactic. Beside the Saint token, there was an introduction paper that introduced the name of the Saint-grade martial tactic in the Saint token and the techniques contained in the Saint-grade martial tactic. Peng soars in the 9 heavens, heavy as Mount Tai, golden shirt. This is it. As it turns out, the Saint-grade martial tactic that contains these 3 techniques is called the Golden Pong Mass Tactic. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he looked at the introduction beside the Saint token. The Golden Pong Mass Tactic was the human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactic that Fengfan, who died in his hands yesterday, cultivated. The defensive technique, Golden Shirt, in this set of Saint-grade martial tactic was the upgraded version of the defensive technique, Silver Shirt, that Duan Lingtian cultivated. Currently, Duan Lingtian had cultivated the Silver Shirt to the highest stage, the impeccable stage. Unless he changed his cultivation to the Golden Shirt, he would not be able to make any progress. Once he changed his cultivation to the Golden Shirt, he would not have to start from scratch. He could directly transform it to the 3rd stage, the competent stage, the Golden Shirt. Its power was no different from the highest stage of the Silver Shirt. Before coming to the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian had already made up his mind to choose the human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactic that contained the Golden Shirt. Apart from the Golden Shirt, he also had his eyes on the Heavy as Mount Tai. The Heavy as Mount Tai was a close-range offensive martial tactic. He had personally experienced its power before. Ever since he came to the Dao Martial Saintland, close-range attacks had always been his weakness. He could only rely on the close-range attack, the sound of death, that was contained in the Saint-grade martial tactic, the Colossal Aerolite Arrow, that he cultivated. The Saint-grade martial tactic, Colossal Aerolite Arrow, was a set of Saint-grade martial tactic that focused on long-range attacks. Therefore, compared to the heavy as Mount Tai, the sound of death was slightly inferior. On the other hand, the Saint-grade martial tactic, Golden Rock Mass tactic, focused on close-range attacks. Foam Fan's Thousand Mass Sword is already in my hands. Once I cultivate the heavy as Mount Tai, even if I've just started cultivating it, the power of the sound of death will be far more powerful than the sound of death when combined with the Thousand Mass Sword. Duan Lingtian knew this very well. The Thousand Mass Sword was inscribed with the 2-star Saint inscription, the Thousand Mass Saint inscription. Once it was activated, it would make the sword as heavy as 1,000 caddies, but it would not burden the user at all. This is it. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he reached out to grab the Saint token that contained the Saint-grade martial tactic, Golden Rock Mass tactic. The moment the Saint token entered his hand, Duan Lingtian's expression changed for no reason. He quickly retrieved the Saint token and took 2 steps back. At the same time, his other hand swept across the place where the Saint token was at lightning speed, stirring up a gust of wind. However, this hand was still too slow. Duan Lingtian was the first to take the Saint token. You're just an outer court disciple. How dare you compete with me for the Golden Rock Mass tactic? Before I borrow it today, don't even think about borrowing it. A cold snort was heard. It was a young man who had appeared not far away from Duan Lingtian. He was looking at Duan Lingtian with contempt. At the same time, he looked down at Duan Lingtian in a condescending manner as he spoke in a condescending tone. Duan Lingtian finally saw clearly that the person who took the Saint token after him was an inner court disciple. This could be seen from the inner court disciple token hanging on his waist. If it was a polite inner court disciple who said that he was in a hurry and wanted to borrow the Golden Rock Mass tactic first, Duan Lingtian might be willing to let him borrow the Golden Rock Mass tactic first. However, this inner court disciple wanted to snatch the Saint token that was in his hand from the beginning. Then, he even spoke to him in a condescending tone as though he was ordering him to do so. At once, Duan Lingtian's face turned grave. He had always been a person who was amenable to persuasion but not coercion. Therefore, in the face of this rude inner court disciple, he only glanced at him coldly and ignored him. He turned around and walked to another area in the Merit Pavilion. There were no Saint-grade martial tactics in that area. Instead, there were jade tokens that recorded all kinds of information. These jade tokens were all-encompassing. They were exactly what Duan Lingtian needed. Although he had been in the Dao Martial Saint Land for more than a year, he still did not know much about the Dao Martial Saint Land. Through these jade tokens, he could learn more about this mysterious and vast Dao Martial Saint Land. How dare you ignore me? When the inner court disciple saw Duan Lingtian leaving with the Saint token after glancing at him indifferently, he was stunned at first. When he regained his senses, he was instantly enraged. He did not expect to encounter such an outer court disciple who did not know what was good for him when he came to the Merit Pavilion to borrow the second half of the Golden Rock Mass tactic. In the Moon Illumination sect's outer court, the only people who could make him wary were the 5 outer court disciples who were ranked in the Earth ranking. He did not care about the other outer court disciples at all. He had seen the 5 outer court disciples who were ranked in the Earth ranking before. He was certain this outer court disciple who did not know what was good for him was not one of them. If it was not for the fact that fighting was prohibited in the Merit Pavilion, he would have taught this outer court disciple who did not know what was good for him a lesson. Boy, everyone has to pay the price for their stupid choices. I'll give you one last chance. Hand the Saint token over obediently and kneel down to apologize to me. Otherwise, it'll be too late for you to regret it if something happens that makes you unhappy after you leave the Merit Pavilion. Chapter 1464. Idiot. Faced with the inner court disciples' repeated provocations and threats, Duan Lingtian finally could not help but turn around. He glanced at the inner court disciple nonchalantly and spat out 2 words, "Idiot." As soon as Duan Lingtian opened his mouth, the inner court disciple was dumbfounded. Did this fellow just call him an idiot? An outer court disciple actually dared to call him an idiot? In an instant, the inner court disciple could only feel the fury in his heart on the verge of bursting out. However, by the time he regained his senses, Duan Lingtian had already picked out a few jade tokens and was heading to the entrance of the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion. Taking a deep breath, the inner court disciple suppressed his anger and followed after him. Soon after, he arrived at the counter in front of Duan Lingtian. He picked up his spatial ring and left. It was obvious he did not intend to borrow the golden rock mask tactic. The white-robed old man behind the counter did not stop him. The reason he did not stop him was because the inner court disciple did not take anything from the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion and did not touch the jade tokens that contained the Saint Grade martial tactic in the Merit Pavilion. Elder. When Duan Lingtian took out the Saint token that contained the golden rock mask tactic and a few other jade tokens and placed them on the counter, he could sense the cold killing intent in the inner court disciple's eyes as he walked down the stairs. However, he completely ignored it. He, Duan Lingtian, had never been a person who was afraid of trouble. Golden rock mask tactic? It's a pretty good human rank prominent Saint Grade martial tactic. The old man picked up the Saint token and took a look at it before he nodded. Then, he looked at the other jade tokens. These jade tokens are just ordinary jade tokens that record some information. However, since there's a lot of information in them, each one costs 1,000 merit points. This golden rock mask tactic costs 30,000 merit points to borrow once. You can borrow it here. After you've paid the merit points, you can start borrowing it. The old man said to Duan Lingtian. Let's pay them all together. Duan Lingtian took out his crystal card and swiped more than 30,000 merit points. After putting away the jade slips that recorded various information, he picked up the Saint slip that recorded the Saint Grade martial tactic, golden rock mask tactic, and began to read it. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian felt a vast amount of information surging into his mind and becoming part of his mind. He had memorized the entire golden rock mask tactics. This was his unique ability. Ordinary martial cultivators and Dao cultivators would need to borrow Saint Grade martial tactics and Saint Grade Dao techniques 5 times before they could fully master them. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, only needed to do it once, and he could memorize it all in an instant. Duan Lingtian, who originally wanted to delay for a quarter of an hour, recalled the words of the white-robed old man behind the counter. He couldn't help but smile. Young people should have the spirit of young people. If that's the case, Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat, and he made up his mind. Then, under the astonished gaze of the white-robed old man, Duan Lingtian put down the Saint slip. Elder, I've finished reading it. You finished reading it? The white-robed old man's eyes widened in shock when he heard that. Did you read it when you were inside? Many people who came to borrow Saint Grade martial tactics would start at the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion. As long as a person picked up the Saint slip in the Merit Pavilion, regardless of whether he came out with the Saint slip in the end, he would have to pay the corresponding borrowing fee. This was to prevent people from secretly borrowing the Saint Grade martial tactic without paying merit points. As the guardian of the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion, other than collecting merit points, the old man's job was to monitor the situation on the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion. Just like the inner court disciple who had left earlier, since he had not touched the Saint slip or jade slip in the 4th floor of the Merit Pavilion, the old man did not stop him when he left. If he had touched the Saint slip or jade slip and wanted to leave, the old man would have stopped him immediately and made him pay the corresponding merit points. In the face of the old man's question, Duan Lingtian smiled. Elder, what do you think? Good lad. You gave me a fright. I really thought you had finished reading the contents of the first stage of the Golden Rock Mask Tactic in an instant. It turns out that you had already read it when you were still inside. The old man said as he shook his head. It was obvious he did not think Duan Lingtian would be able to finish reading the contents of the first stage of the Golden Rock Mask Tactic in such a short time. If he found out that not only did Duan Lingtian finish reading the first stage of the Golden Rock Mask Tactic, but he had even finished reading all 5 stages of the Golden Rock Mask Tactic, one could only wonder what kind of expression he would have. This was what made Duan Lingtian different from other people. He could memorize all the Saint Grade martial tactics in the Saint slip in the blink of an eye. This gave him a unique advantage in this regard that was not something ordinary people could compare to. Just like now, he had spent 30,000 merit points to memorize the contents of the Golden Rock Mask Tactic in one go. He did not need to borrow it again in the future. Compared to ordinary martial cultivators who wanted to borrow the Golden Rock mass tactic, he saved a total of 120,000 merit points. After all, an ordinary martial cultivator would need to borrow it at least 5 times if he wanted to cultivate the Golden Rock mass tactic to the highest stage. If he borrowed it 5 times and spent 30,000 merit points each time, it would be 150,000 merit points. Upon hearing the old man's words, Duan Lingtian only smiled and did not explain further. What could he say? Could he say that he had memorized the entire Golden Rock mass tactic and did not need to borrow it again in the future? Even if he said that, the old man might not believe him. Elder, I'll take my leave first then. Duan Lingtian bade farewell to the old man and prepared to leave. That inner court disciple earlier is at the early Saint Rudiment stage. The old man reminded Duan Lingtian when he was about to leave. It was rare for him to do so. It was obvious he had been watching the conflict between Duan Lingtian and the inner court disciple from the beginning until the end. Although it's not important to me, thank you very much, Elder. Upon hearing the old man's reminder, Duan Lingtian smiled and thanked him. It's not important. The old man was stunned. Isn't there a rule in the sect that inner court disciples are not allowed to bully outer court disciples in the outer court district? Let alone the fact that he's only at the early Saint Rudiment stage. Even if he's at the intermediate Saint Rudiment stage, or even the mastery Saint Rudiment stage, would he still dare to make a move on me? Duan Lingtian smiled. The old man was stunned. So that's what you think. However, if that's what you think, you're sorely mistaken. Huh. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian could not help but be puzzled. The Merit Pavilion is located at the intersection of the Inner Court District and the Outer Court District. Strictly speaking, this is not considered the Outer Court District. Naturally, it's not considered the Inner Court District but the Middle District. The old man said, Inner Court disciples are allowed to attack Outer Court disciples here. As long as they don't kill or even cripple the Outer Court disciple, there's almost no restriction. I see. If that's the case, this is indeed very important to me. Duan Lingtian did not expect this to be the case. He thanked the old man again. Originally, when he had a conflict with the inner court disciple, he had already prepared himself for the other party's revenge. Naturally, he only thought the other party would not dare to attack him before he entered the inner court. As long as he entered the inner court, he would not necessarily be afraid of the other party. However, after listening to the old man's words, he realized he was wrong. As it turned out, the Merit Pavilion was not considered the Outer Court District. Outer Court disciples were not protected by the sect's rules here. Early Saint Rudiment stage? However, after learning that the Inner Court disciple was only an early Saint Rudiment stage martial cultivator, Duan Lingtian was no longer worried. After Duan Lingtian left the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion, he continued to walk down. Soon, he arrived at the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. Just when he was about to continue walking down, one of the inner court deacons behind the counter at the entrance of the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion called out to him. Are you Duan Lingtian? The inner court deacon's eyes were filled with curiosity. It was obvious his companion was curious as well. It was obvious they had already vaguely guessed Duan Lingtian's identity, but they were not certain. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. Then, under the 2 inner court deacons' shocked gazes, he left the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion and continued to walk down. So he's really Duan Lingtian. No wonder he's so generous. That's right. He gave away 700,000 merit points in one go. I heard he made a net profit of 3 million merit points yesterday. Today, he even generously returned half of his merit points to the people in the Outer Court District who gave him merit points. As they spoke, the 2 inner court deacons sighed again. Elder Fong gone. When he passed by the 2nd level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian greeted the old man who had already opened his eyes and was looking at him with a smile. Then, with the old man's nod, he went to the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion. When he arrived at the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian felt as though he had entered a wet market. Many inner court disciples were shouting and peddling. There are some stalls that weren't here when I arrived. Duan Lingtian glanced around the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion and noticed that there were many new stalls. He immediately called out to Hualao, and began to wander around the first level of the Merit Pavilion again. Unfortunately, he did not come across the materials needed to repair the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. Looks like I've run out of luck. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled bitterly. He stepped out and left the Merit Pavilion. After taking a few steps, Duan Lingtian stopped in his tracks. This was because he noticed that someone was walking towards him with ill intentions. With just one look, Duan Lingtian recognized this person. It was the extremely arrogant inner court disciple that he had met on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. After leaving the Merit Pavilion, this person had obviously been waiting for him here. I thought you wouldn't dare to come out. The inner court disciple looked at Duan Lingtian and sneered. From his words, it was obvious that he had been waiting for Duan Lingtian for a while. Don't dare to come out? You think you're worthy of scaring me into not coming out? Chapter 1465. The inner court disciple initially thought that the outer court disciple in front of him would panic after realizing that he was blocking his path. Who knew that not only did the other party not panic, but he even talked back to him fearlessly. He did not know why, but at this moment, a sense of dread rose in his heart. Could it be that there was someone behind this outer court disciple? Otherwise, why would he dare to talk back to an inner court disciple like him? Was he not afraid that he would be bedridden for a few months? At this moment, many people noticed the confrontation between Duan Lingtian and the inner court disciple, and they all gathered around to watch the show. Even the people on the 1st floor of the Merit Pavilion, including the inner court disciples who had set up their stalls, closed their stalls and came out to watch the show. To them, it was better to watch a show than to stay in the 1st floor of the Merit Pavilion and guard their stalls. Moreover, when there was a show outside, no one would care about their stalls at all. This was because everyone had gone to watch the show. It's Yinan. Someone recognized the inner court disciple who was confronting Duan Lingtian and made fun of him. Yinan, you're an inner court disciple. Why are you competing with an outer court disciple? Don't you think it's embarrassing? When Yinan heard that, his face turned green and white. It's him. At this moment, the owners of the stalls that Duan Lingtian had visited earlier, a few inner court disciples, recognized Duan Lingtian. They had a deep impression of Duan Lingtian. This was because Duan Lingtian had pushed the price of their items down to their bottom line. Soon, more and more people came to watch the show, and they almost formed a circle. Yinan did not expect the situation to turn out like this. It was completely out of his control, and he was in a difficult position. Who's your master? He took a deep breath and asked Duan Lingtian through true energy voice transmission. His tone was gentler. You're asking about my master? When Duan Lingtian heard Yinan's true energy voice transmission, how could he not know what he was thinking? He was instantly amused and teased him. Why? Are you worried that I have a master who's in the upper echelon of the sect, and you're afraid that you can't afford to offend him? Yinan used true energy voice transmission, but Duan Lingtian directly said it out loud. For a moment, the gazes that everyone present looked at Yinan became somewhat strange. You've already stopped him, and now you're asking him if he has a back. Isn't it a little too late? Many inner disciples couldn't help but laugh. Haha, Yinan, don't tell me you're scared. If you're scared, then hurry up and make way for this junior brother. Don't block this junior brother from returning to the outer sect. There were also many inner disciples who knew Yinan and were not on good terms with him who made fun of him. An inner disciple actually cowered in front of an outer disciple. How shameful. More and more people were making fun of him. Yinan's face alternated between green and white. His heart was filled with shame and indignation. His gaze once again fell on Duan Lingtian with a piercingly cold light. No matter who is behind you, since you don't know the rules of respecting your elder brothers, then as your senior brother, I will properly teach you how to behave. Yinan's words were so dignified that he changed his nature of intercepting Duan Lingtian. Disrespect my elder brother? Upon hearing Yinan's words, Duan Lingtian laughed. What a big hat. Do you think that even if I have someone behind me, he won't do anything to you because he's in the wrong after you said that? Yinan did not expect his thoughts to be exposed in just a few words. For a moment, he was filled with shame and indignation. He could sense that the gazes that were looking at him had become unusually strange. Actually, you don't have to spend so much effort. To tell you the truth, I don't have anyone behind me. You don't have to be suspicious. If you want to make a move, then go ahead. If you don't dare to make a move, then scram. I still have to rush back to cultivate. I don't have time to waste here with you. Duan Lingtian said indifferently. He was getting a little impatient as he spoke. Haha, Yinan, don't tell me you're really a coward? This junior brother already said that he doesn't have anyone behind him. Don't tell me you're still afraid to make a move? How boring. I thought there would be a show to watch. Who knew that Yinan would be so cowardly? Many inner court disciples were eager to see the world burn, and they shook their heads as they spoke. His words entered Yinan's ears, and it caused his face to flush red. He was angered to the point he couldn't restrain himself any longer, and he glared angrily at Duan Lingtian. Today, as an inner court senior brother, I'll properly teach you, an outer court junior brother, how to respect your elder brother. Duan Lingtian had exposed Yinan's thoughts time and time again. It had also caused Yinan to be completely enraged. He almost lost his mind. You want to teach me? Then, let's see if you have the ability. Looking at Yinan, who was ready to make a move at any time, Duan Lingtian said with a cold smile on his face, You're courting death. Yinan roared and finally made his move. His body moved like the wind and thunder. In an instant, he had already closed in on Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! With a raise of his hand, a 7-foot-long spear appeared. He suddenly shook it and whipped it toward Duan Lingtian. The long spear pierced through the air as spear shadows filled the sky. They were like poisonous snakes that charged out in unison and bit toward Duan Lingtian. One must admit that as an inner court disciple at the early Saint Rudiment stage, Yinan's strength was extremely impressive. At the very least, he was not any weaker than Feng Fan before he activated the 1,000-mass Saint inscription on his heavy sword. In the face of Yinan's menacing spear shadows that filled the sky, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged. He stood there motionless like a mountain, as though he was willing to expose his entire body to Yinan. While many of the spectating inner court disciples were worried for Duan Lingtian finally made his move. A heavy sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. As soon as the heavy sword appeared in his hand, his true energy surged into it, causing a mysterious aura to appear on the heavy sword. It was as though it had transformed into a 1,000-mass hammer in an instant. Heavy as Mount Tai, Duan Lingtian chanted in his heart. With a lift of his hand, the heavy sword in his hand trembled before it suddenly swung out to meet Yinan's menacing spear shadows that filled the sky. The heavy sword moved like wind and thunder. Wherever it passed, it was as though a mountain had collapsed. It caused the air to tremble and set off a series of continuous sounds of wind and thunder. The sound of wind and thunder was accompanied by gusts of raging wind that spread in all directions. It's the 1,000-mass Saint inscription. An inner court disciple was the first to exclaim in surprise. It was obvious that he had recognized the Saint inscription that had been activated on Duan Lingtian's heavy sword. When Yinan heard the inner court disciple's exclamation, his expression changed slightly. He realized that the outer court disciple in front of him might really have an extraordinary background. What a joke. That was a 2-star Saint inscription, the 1,000-mass Saint inscription. A Saint weapon that was inscribed with the 1,000-mass Saint inscription would cost at least 200,000 merit points in the Merit Pavilion. How could someone who could use such a Saint weapon be an ordinary outer court disciple? It was obviously impossible. At this moment, Yinan began to regret his decision. However, he had already attacked with all his might. It was too late for him to stop now. However, he soon realized that even if he did not stop, he would still not be able to hurt his opponent. As the heavy sword that was as heavy as a mountain collided with Yinan's long spear, the air seemed to have exploded at this moment. Boom! A small shockwave raged out, setting off gusts of even more terrifying wind. The raging wind caused the robes of the group of inner court disciples who were watching to flutter. However, they did not care about this at all. They continued to watch the duel between Duan Lingtian and Yinan without blinking. As the air seemed to have exploded, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the outer court disciple who had swung the heavy sword in his hand continuously retreated several steps. On the other hand, The spear in the inner court disciple's hand, Yinan, was broken and sent flying far away. Yinan's hand that was holding the spear was now a bloody mess. Not only that, Yinan, who was at the center of the collision, also forcibly endured the oncoming force after the spear in her hand was knocked away. Her entire body was blasted away and fell to the ground more than 10 meters away, looking extremely miserable. This heavy as Mount Tai is really awesome when used together with the 1,000-mass saint inscription. Although the vital energy and blood in Duan Lingtian's body were surging, there was a hint of excitement in his eyes. He had not officially started to cultivate the heavy as Mount Tai offensive technique in the Golden Rock Mass tactic. He had only casually used it, but the effect of using it together with the 1,000-mass saint inscription surprised and delighted him at the same time. When the sword swept out like a mountain, it was as though everything had to give way to him. That kind of domineering feeling, that kind of delightful feeling, made the blood in his entire body seem to boil. Right now, he was filled with excitement and couldn't wait to laugh out loud. Inner court senior brother? Duan Lingtian sneered as he glanced indifferently at Yinan, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog. After putting away the 1,000-mass sword, he strode toward the outer court area under the shocked gazes of the group of inner court disciples. When Yinan heard the sarcasm in Duan Lingtian's sneer, he was so angry that his vital energy and blood surged. His injuries worsened, and he fainted immediately. When Duan Lingtian's silhouette disappeared before their eyes, the inner court disciples who were watching finally regained their senses. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. When did such a person appear in the outer court? There are only 5 outer court disciples who can defeat Yinan so easily. Moreover, they're all powerhouses at the peak of the mortal shedding stage who are ranked on the Earth ranking. You're wrong. It's 4 people. Feng Fan died yesterday. I'm not wrong. Feng Fan is dead, but someone has replaced his position. Don't forget, after killing Feng Fan, that newly emerged monster from the outer court has already replaced Feng Fan's position and replaced Feng Fan's ranking on the Earth ranking. That monster seems to be called Duan Lingtian. One by one, the outer sect disciples began to discuss among themselves. What happened just now had truly shocked them to the core. Do you guys think that could that outer court disciple be Duan Lingtian? Suddenly, a voice sounded. If you say so, it's possible. The sword in the outer court disciple's hand looks very similar to the sword Feng Fan used before. Not only that, but it also has the 1,000-mass saint inscription on it. Many inner court disciples regained their senses after the reminder. In the end, they were almost certain. Chapter 1466. After confirming that the outer court disciple was Duan Lingtian, the shock on the group of inner court disciples' faces increased instead of lessening. I've only heard that Duan Lingtian is strong, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. Although the 1,000-mass sword contributed to his victory over Yinan, it doesn't cover up his own strength at all. Many inner court disciples exclaimed, "He's worthy of his reputation." That Duan Lingtian is even more monstrous than the rumors say. Another inner court disciple chimed in. I heard that Duan Lingtian is only a perfection mortal shedding stage martial cultivator now. He's already so monstrous when he's only at the perfection mortal shedding stage. How terrifying would he be when he breaks through to the paramount mortal shedding stage, or even the Saint Rudiment stage? Someone exclaimed when he recalled Duan Lingtian's current cultivation base. The scene fell into a dead silence at once. After all this time, they had forgotten about this. Currently, Duan Lingtian was only a perfection mortal shedding stage martial cultivator. A perfection mortal shedding stage martial cultivator who killed Feng Fan, who's ranked 99th on the Earth ranking, and replaced him. He entered the Earth ranking with his cultivation base at the perfection mortal shedding stage. I don't think there's such a monstrous person in the history of the 9 sect alliances, right? An inner court disciple said. Duan Lingtian is destined to rewrite the history of the 9 sect alliances' Earth ranking. Many inner court disciples were excited. Duan Lingtian is our Moon Illumination sect's disciple. This is our entire Moon Illumination sect's glory. I heard that Duan Lingtian earned a total of 3 million merit points from the battle with Feng Fan yesterday. I heard about that too. However, he seems to have returned half of it to most of the people today. Even so, the merit points in his hands are still more than 5 million. 5 million merit points. His wealth is comparable to those inner court elders in our inner court, right? Many inner court disciples were envious when they mentioned Duan Lingtian's wealth. He's Duan Lingtian, a tycoon with more than 5 million merit points? The few inner disciples who had been patronized by Duan Lingtian before were so angry that they wanted to vomit blood when they thought of how Duan Lingtian tried to bargain with them. At the same time, their eyes were filled with resentment. You're a tycoon with millions of merit points. Do you really need to haggle so much just to buy something that only costs a few thousand merit points? He had forcefully reduced the original price of several thousand merit points to a few hundred merit points. Duan Lingtian was naturally unaware of the grievances of these inner disciples. After Yinan fainted from anger, he returned to the outer sect district and returned to his own independent courtyard. After returning to his room, the first thing he did was enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After handing over a pile of materials to Hualao, he went to the second floor of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He took out the few jade slips he bought from the fourth floor of the Merit Pavilion and browsed through the large amount of information inside. There were many things he was interested in these jade slips. While Hualao was busy repairing the third floor of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian's mind was completely immersed in the few jade slips in his hands. To be more precise, he was immersed in the large amount of information contained in these jade slips. The information in these few jade slips was all-encompassing. There was information about Saint Refinement Master's weapon forging and medicine refinement, about Dao Talisman inscribing by Dao Talisman Masters, about Saint Inscription Masters inscribing Saint Inscriptions. There was also information about many other aspects that were too much for the eyes to take in. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian was mainly looking at the information about the Saint Inscriptions. Although he had the broadsword inscribed with the 2-star Saint Inscription, the 1,000-mass Saint Inscription, in his hand, and he could see what the 1,000-mass Saint Inscription looked like, he could only find out that the Saint Inscription in the Dao Martial Saint Land was similar to the inscription in the Mortal Continent. He did not know anything about other connections. Through the information recorded in the jade slips in his hands, Duan Lingtian had a deeper understanding of the Saint Inscription. As it turns out, the Saint Inscription and the inscription have so many similarities. As long as I can find a point of convergence, there's not much difference between the inscription and the Saint Inscription. It's not impossible to upgrade the inscription to the Saint Inscription. Perhaps, the other memories of the Reincarnation Emperor Wu are meaningless to me now. However, the memories of the inscription Dao might be a great fortune for me in the Dao Martial Saint Land. A Saint Inscription Master represents wealth. After gaining a deeper understanding of the Saint Inscription, Duan Lingtian realized that as long as he studied the Saint Inscription himself, he might be able to find the point of convergence between the Saint Inscription and the inscription. In that case, the memories of the Reincarnation Emperor Wu regarding the inscription Dao would come in handy. Duan Lingtian might become a Saint Inscription Master in the Dao Martial Saint Land. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, the value of the Saint Inscription was much higher than the Dao Talisman. The reason for the difference was that the Dao Talisman was usually a one-time use item. Naturally, Duan Lingtian learned from the information in the jade slips that some high-grade Dao Talismans could be used twice or even thrice. Those high-grade Dao Talismans were not something the Moon Illumination sect could come into contact with. To the Moon Illumination sect, they were a legend. Unlike the Dao Talisman, the Saint Inscription was usually inscribed on the Saint Weapon. As long as the Saint Weapon was not destroyed, the Saint Inscription would always be useful. Due to this reason, the value of the Saint Inscription was very high. Just like the 1,000-mass sword in his hand, it was worth more than 200,000 merit points just because it was inscribed with a 2-star Saint Inscription. On the other hand, a 2-star Dao Talisman could only be sold for several tens of thousands of merit points. Naturally, there were exceptions. For example, a 2-star offensive Dao Talisman. A 2-star offensive Dao Talisman could unleash an attack at the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage once it was used. After having a certain understanding of the Saint Inscription, Duan Lingtian learned more about the Saint Inscription Masters and the weapon refinement and medicine refinement. However, he soon realized he would not be able to refine weapons and medicine refinement anymore. This was because the Saint Inscription Masters in the Dao Martial Saint Land had to possess a body with the pure fire attribute. Only then would they be able to communicate with the flames needed to refine weapons and medicine refinement. This was completely different from the Cloud Continent. On the Cloud Continent, as long as one's cultivation base had reached a certain level, one would be able to condense pill fire or weapon fire with one's origin energy, as long as one had an innate talent in alchemy and weapons crafting. As expected, different temples have different scriptures, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. However, he was not disappointed after learning about this. This was because there was no shortage of Saint Inscription Masters in the Dao Martial Saint Land, whether it was weapon refinement or medicine refinement. What was lacking was Saint Inscription Masters and Dao Talisman Masters. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, apart from the martial Dao, Saint Inscriptions and Dao Talismans were the most respected. I'll ask Elder Fonggon when I have the time to see where I can learn the Saint Inscription. As long as I understand the foundation of the Saint Inscription, it'll only be a matter of time before I can connect the inscription with the Saint Inscription. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, his heart could not help but surge with excitement. Saint Inscription Master. Duan Lingtian had the potential and innate talent to become a Saint Inscription Master. Moreover, once he became a Saint Inscription Master, he would not be an ordinary Saint Inscription Master. Due to the reincarnation Emperor Wu's memory, once he connected the inscription with the Saint Inscription, he might even have the chance to become a Saint Inscription Master. Although there was only a one-word difference between the Saint Inscription Master and Saint Inscription Master, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. There might not even be one Saint Inscription Master among 1,000 Saint Inscription Masters. After roughly understanding the other information contained in the few jade tokens, Duan Lingtian shifted his focus back to cultivation. First, he had to convert the defensive technique, Silver Shirt, to Golden Shirt. As the upgraded version of the Silver Shirt, the cultivation of the Golden Shirt was similar to that of the Silver Shirt. For this reason, it did not take long for Duan Lingtian to cultivate the Golden Shirt. Moreover, it was the Golden Shirt that was at the third stage, the competent stage. Currently, as soon as Duan Lingtian cast the Golden Shirt, his body glowed with a golden light as though he was wearing a layer of Golden Shirt. After cultivating the Golden Shirt, Duan Lingtian shifted his focus back to the Saint Grade martial tactic, the Golden Rock Mass tactic, and began to cultivate the offensive technique, the Gargantuan Mountain. This was a powerful technique that was combined with the Thousand Mass Sword. Today, he had not even cultivated the first stage of the Gargantuan Mountain, but the first time he used the Gargantuan Mountain together with the Thousand Mass Sword, he sent Yinan, the inner court disciple, flying, using strength to overcome strength, using strength to fight strength. The feeling of his vital energy and blood rolling in his body made Duan Lingtian feel extremely exhilarated. Naturally, while he was cultivating the Saint Grade martial tactic, Duan Lingtian did not neglect the cultivation of his cultivation base. His current goal was to break through to the paramount mortal shedding stage as soon as possible. At that time, his strength would improve by leaps and bounds. His saint veins would also be open to the maximum. In the Azure Cloud Mansion in the Dao Martial Saint Land, a huge floating island was suspended in the air without any support. It was surrounded by clouds and mist, and it looked like a paradise on earth. And on this floating island, there was an incomparably luxurious palace. The palace was huge and occupied a vast area. It was even bigger than the capital of a dynasty on the mortal continent. Behind the palace was a back garden that looked like a prairie. There were many docile strange beasts walking around, making the entire back garden look lively and lively. There was a spacious pavilion in the corner of the backyard. The pavilion was also suspended in the air, and there was a vast lake under the pavilion. There were all kinds of fish swimming in the lake. In the pavilion, a young man and a young woman who looked like a golden couple were sitting opposite to each other around a stone table. The stone table was filled with delicacies. Just a glance was enough to whet one's appetite. However, the man and woman's attention was not on the delicacies. To be more precise, the woman's attention was elsewhere. "Rower, are you thinking about Tianer again?" A handsome young man with an appearance that was extremely similar to Duan Lingtian asked in a soft voice with a gentle gaze. Brother Feng. It's been so many years. Why hasn't Tian come yet? Could something have happened to him? Chapter 1467. Don't worry. As long as Tian has the ability to open the jade box I left for him, he'll naturally come to the Dao Martial Saint Land. I've already given him a detailed address so he can look for Elder Ku there. The young man was none other than Duan Lingtian's cheapskate father, Duan Rufeng. He looked at his wife and comforted her. As long as he finds Elder Ku will bring him to see us immediately. We should have brought him along with us back then. Li Ro said regretfully. Rower, didn't you agree with my decision back then? Believe me, with the 3 Dao talismans I left behind, coupled with Tian Er's great fortune, he'll definitely be able to come to the Dao Martial Saint Land safely. Who knows, he might have already met Elder Ku and is on his way back now. Duan Rufeng said. Back then, he had left his son behind because he hoped his son would grow up step by step in the mortal continent. That way, he would be able to unleash his potential. If his son followed him to the Dao Martial Saint Land, his future in the martial Dao would definitely be affected. Which parent would not want their son to be successful? Due to this reason, when she heard Duan Rufeng's explanation, Li Ro agreed without even thinking about it. I hope so. Li Ro was still a little worried. A few years ago, when I was out, I met the Oracle Man and asked him to divine Tian Er's fortune. Duan Rufeng looked at Li Ro and smiled. Before he could finish his words, Li Ro interrupted him. You mean the Oracle Man who knows everything about astronomy and geography and is said to be able to divine fate? Li Ro had been in the Azure Cloud Mansion for a long time. She had also heard about the Oracle Man in the Dao Martial Saint Land who could divine fate. However, he had an eccentric temper and would only divine the fortunes of those he liked. Otherwise, he would not care no matter how powerful the force behind him was. That's him. Duan Rufeng nodded. I heard that he has a weird temper and only reads the fortunes of those he likes. Furthermore, it is said that even if he reads the fortunes of those he finds pleasing to the eye, he would only read the fortunes of those involved. Why would he be willing to read Tian Er's fortune? Li Ro asked suspiciously. I don't know why either. I didn't even recognize him at first. He was the one who took the initiative to find me. Duan Rufeng had a strange expression on his face when he said this. He took the initiative to look for you? Li Ro was stunned. Although her husband was the mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, it should not be enough for the Oracle Man to take the initiative to curry favor with him, right? Li Ro had even heard of a rumor. The leader of a force that was on par with the Azure Cloud Mansion wanted to have his fortune told by the Oracle Man, but he was rejected by the Oracle Man. Therefore, she did not think that the Oracle Man came to her because of her husband's identity. There must be something else behind this. I found it strange as well. However, he said something about the heaven's secret not being divulged. Moreover, when I confirmed his identity and asked him to read Tian Er's fortune, he did not reject me at all. He immediately agreed. Duan Rufeng said. He said Tian Er is a person with great fortune, and his achievements in the future will surpass mine. He also said it's fortunate that I didn't bring Tian Er to the Dao Martial Saint Land directly. Otherwise, Tian Er would have lost a great opportunity. What great opportunity? Li Ro asked curiously. I asked him about it at that time, but he said he didn't know. Duan Rufeng smiled wryly. Again, the heaven's secret not being divulged? Li Ro frowned. Brother Feng, don't tell me that the Oracle Man you met is an imposter? Regarding Tian Er's great opportunity, he didn't say anything about the heaven's secret not being divulged. He only said that even he couldn't read it. He only knew that it was a great opportunity. According to him, the great opportunity that Tian Er obtained had already exceeded the scope of his divination. When Duan Rufeng reached the end of his sentence, his face was filled with joy. After all, that was his son. The greater the opportunity, the greater the achievement, the happier he would be as his father. If it was not because he wanted his son to succeed, he would not have left his son on Cloud Continent. Now it seemed like he had made the right choice. If he had brought his son to the Dao Martial Saint Land at that time, his son would have missed the great opportunity. As for the Oracle Man's identity, I've confirmed it many times. He's definitely not an imposter. Duan Rufeng was very sure about this. If he's really the old prophet, then what he said should be true. A great fortuitous encounter that even the old prophet couldn't predict. It seems like Tian-Er's fortuitous encounter on Cloud Continent is really extraordinary. A rare smile appeared on Li Ro's face. Haha, the son of I, Duan Rufeng, must be someone with great fortune. As the saying goes, like father, like son. Duan Rufeng laughed out loud. You still have the cheek to talk about your great opportunity? Until now, I still can't help but break out in cold sweat every time I think about the experience you mentioned. If it wasn't for that devil cultivator's soul being destroyed, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to control your body completely until now, Li Ro said snappily. Upon hearing this, Duan Rufeng smiled awkwardly. He was speechless for a moment. How's Jingru and our 2 future daughters-in-law? Li Ro asked when she recalled the 3 women who came with them. Among the 3 of them, other than Jingru, whose innate talent is slightly inferior, Bai Yao and Xiaolan's innate talent are very good. In at most a year, Bai Yao and Xiaolan's cultivation base will definitely break through again. Duan Rufeng smiled. That's good. When Li Ro mentioned Bai Yao and Xiaolan, a smile bloomed on her face. They were her 2 future daughters-in-law. Not only were their characters good, but they were also loyal to her son. After so many years, their hearts had not changed at all. They were very similar to her in this aspect. It was rare. As far as I know, these 2 daughters-in-law don't seem to have obtained Tian-Er's approval yet, right? As for the other 2 daughters-in-law whom I haven't seen before, do you really not need me to send someone to bring them to the Azure Cloud Mansion? Duan Rufeng asked. It's better for Kerr and Fei to stay on Cloud Continent to accompany Tian-Er. If all 4 of his second daughters-in-law were to be brought here, wouldn't Tian-Er hate you to death? When Li Ro mentioned the 2 daughters-in-law, she could not stop smiling. It was not hard to imagine. If Duan Lingtian was here and heard the conversation between his father and mother, he would definitely be shocked. The Oracle Man? He said he had a great fortuitous encounter that was difficult to predict. If he had followed his father to leave Cloud Continent and come to the Dao Martial Saint Land, would he not have encountered such a great fortuitous encounter? Was it not referring to the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda? After all, if he had followed his father to the Dao Martial Saint Land, he would not have gone to the overseas Saint Islands and would not have encountered the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It was all part of God's will. Duan Rufeng and Li Ro, naturally, did not know that their son had come to the Dao Martial Saint Land more than a year ago. Due to the fact that the voice transmission jade slip in the exquisite jade box was damaged, Duan Lingtian did not know where to meet the people his father had arranged. They did not know they were going to be grandparents soon. Just like how Duan Rufeng and Li Ro did not know. Duan Lingtian did not know his father was the mansion master of a powerful force in the Dao Martial Saint Land, the Azure Cloud Mansion. The Azure Cloud Mansion was even more powerful than the Green Wave Han Mansion behind Han Xuanai. Currently, Duan Lingtian was staying obediently in the Moon Illumination Sect's outer court area on the 2nd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda in his room in his independent courtyard. In these 3 months, my cultivation base has improved. I'm 1 step closer to the paramount mortal shedding stage now. Duan Lingtian, who had stayed in the 2nd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda for 3 months, was very satisfied with his progress. Apart from that, I've also successfully cultivated the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Golden Shirt, to the 4th stage, the Proficient stage. I've also successfully cultivated the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Gargantuan Mountain, to the 1st stage, the Fundamental Awareness stage. To Duan Lingtian, the progress he made in these 3 months was huge. Naturally, although he had cultivated the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Golden Rock Mass Tactic, Duan Lingtian did not neglect the cultivation of the Colossal Aerolite Arrow. However, among the techniques in the Colossal Aerolite Arrow, he mainly cultivated the Aerolite Strike and the Body and Arrow Synchronization. He had already cultivated these 2 techniques to a certain stage. If he wanted to improve them further, he would have to put in a lot of effort. Naturally, the progress he made during these 3 months would not be too exaggerated. As for the Golden Shirt, the reason it improved so quickly was due to Duan Lingtian's freakish body. Due to this reason, the cultivation speed of the Golden Shirt was also freakish. 3 months in the 2nd level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was only 1 month in the outside world. After a month, Duan Lingtian walked out of his room to get some fresh air. However, as soon as he opened the door, Duan Lingtian saw a duel invitation flying toward him. Someone sent me a duel invitation? Duan Lingtian frowned, but he still grabbed the duel invitation in his hand. When he opened the duel invitation, he realized it was an ordinary duel invitation. The person who sent the duel invitation was called He Zhong. He Zhong? Isn't that the person who ranks third in the outer court? His ranking on the Earth ranking is much higher than Feng Fan's. I think he's a powerhouse at the peak of the mortal shedding stage who's ranked 66th on the Earth ranking. It had not been a day or two since he came to the Moon Illumination sect's outer court. Duan Lingtian already knew about the other 4 Moon Illumination sect's outer court disciples who were ranked on the Earth ranking. Therefore, when he saw He Zhong's name on the duel invitation, he knew who the person was. It's not a death duel invitation, so he shouldn't be from Lu Huan. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he thought to himself, perhaps he heard that I defeated Feng Chong, so he wants to spar with me to test my strength. The moment Duan Lingtian thought about this, his frown disappeared. After pressing his fingerprint on the duel invitation, Duan Lingtian walked out of the courtyard. As soon as he walked out of the courtyard, Duan Lingtian noticed many people looking at him from afar. All of them were looking at him with anticipation as though they were waiting for something. It seems like many people know that He Zhong sent me a duel invitation. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Chapter 1468. He Zhong responded quickly. The battle in the martial arts practice field would be held in 10 days. 10 days? He's going to take so long to prepare? Duan Lingtian could not help but frown when he heard He Zhong's reply. In fact, Duan Lingtian was not the only one who was puzzled. Even the group of outer court disciples who were waiting to watch the show were puzzled as well. Senior brother He Zhong is only going to fight senior brother Duan Lingtian in 10 days? Isn't it too late? Perhaps senior brother He Zhong's martial tactic is about to have a breakthrough recently. That's possible. It seems like senior brother He Zhong is afraid of senior brother Duan Lingtian as well. He took the initiative to issue a duel invitation and even took such a long time to fight senior brother Duan Lingtian. That's not strange. Back then, senior brother Duan Lingtian killed Feng Fan in just a blink of an eye. Senior brother Duan Lingtian's strength is definitely not inferior to senior brother He Zhong. That's right. It's almost impossible for senior brother He Zhong to kill Feng Fan in a death duel like that. Currently, the group of outer court disciples worshipped Duan Lingtian's strength almost blindly. Although He Zhong was a powerhouse who ranked 66th on the Earth ranking and the 3rd powerhouse in the Moon Illumination sect's outer court, they were more optimistic about Duan Lingtian in the battle between He Zhong and Duan Lingtian. It was not only because Duan Lingtian had killed Feng Fan a month ago, but it was also because Duan Lingtian had defeated an inner court disciple a month ago. Moreover, it was a defeat in just one move. That battle could be said to have greatly increased the outer court's reputation. What kind of glory was it for an outer court disciple to defeat an inner court disciple? They have so much confidence in me? When Duan Lingtian found out that the group of outer court disciples had so much confidence in him, he could not help but smile wryly. To think that he had planned to set up another bet. From the looks of it now, even if he wanted to set up a bet, it was likely that no one would be willing to bet. Of course, Duan Lingtian also knew that no one would set up a bet for an ordinary duel. Even if someone did set up a bet, no one would place a bet. Because sparring wouldn't affect one's life, it could be manipulated under the table. If you let me win, I'll let you win. The two sides of the duel could join forces with the banker to make a good profit. No one was a fool. Naturally, no one would bet on such a gamble. Ling Yun and Xiong, who are both in closed-door cultivation? Duan Lingtian went to look for Ling Yun and Xiong Hu, only to find that they were both in closed-door cultivation. Last time, when I had a life and death duel with Feng Fan, I didn't see them either. Could it be that they haven't come out from closed-door cultivation since last time? Duan Lingtian looked for Ling Yun and Xiong Hu mainly because he wanted to return the merit points that his teacher, Feng Hui, had entrusted to him for safekeeping. He planned to give each of them 50,000 yuan. He would give all the 100,000 merit points that Feng Hui had given him to both of them. After all, He was not short of merit points now. However, since both of them were in closed-door cultivation, he could only wait for the next time. Just as Duan Lingtian was preparing to return to the second level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda to cultivate for a month, an unexpected guest came to visit. "It's you." Duan Lingtian was no stranger to this unexpected guest. They had met once before. It was one of the two burly men from the mansion of the Outer Court's Grand Elder, Dongfang Quan. "Duan Lingtian, Elder Dongfang heard that you've come out from closed-door cultivation, so he wants to meet you in his mansion." The burly man went straight to the point. "Elder Dongfang wants to meet me?" Duan Lingtian was stunned. He could not figure out why Dongfang Quan wanted to meet him. After all, he had only made a small deal with Dongfang Quan back then. It was a fair deal. Other than that, he had nothing to do with Dongfang Quan. "Please come in." The burly man looked at Duan Lingtian with a look that said, "If you don't leave by yourself, I'll carry you." All right. Although Duan Lingtian had no idea why Dongfang Quan wanted to meet him, he did not reject him. He was still in the outer court of the Moon Illumination sect, so he could not afford to offend Dongfang Quan. No matter what, Dongfang Quan was the outer court's Grand Elder. If he wanted to deal with him, it would be a piece of cake. Not only that, but Duan Lingtian was also curious why Dongfang Quan wanted to meet him. When he arrived at Dongfang Quan's mansion again, Duan Lingtian met Dongfang Quan again under the guidance of the burly man. When he saw Dongfang Quan, he was tasting tea in the gazebo. "Have a seat." After Dongfang Quan gestured to Duan Lingtian to take a seat, he gestured to the burly man who brought Duan Lingtian in a nonchalant manner. The burly man immediately retreated tactfully. "Are you curious why I want to meet you?" Dongfang Quan asked.
Yes.
Duan Lingtian nodded. Indeed, he was very curious. "I heard you've accepted He Zhong's battle invitation?" Dongfang Quan asked again.
Yes.
Duan Lingtian nodded. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "Do you know He Zhong's identity?" Dongfang Quan asked. "If I'm not mistaken, he should be the direct disciple of an inner court elder, right?" Duan Lingtian speculated. Although there were no rumors about He Zhong's background in the outer court, Duan Lingtian knew He Zhong's background was not simple. Just like Feng Fan, no one knew that he had an inner sect elder as his master. He Zhong's master is the vice sect leader. Dongfang Quan looked deeply at Duan Lingtian and said, "Vice sect leader?" Duan Lingtian was shocked when he heard that. It was not his first day in the Moon Illumination sect. Naturally, he knew what the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect meant. Although he was not at the saint stage, he was at the eminent saint stage. His strength was only inferior to the sect leader and a few other saint stage powerhouses. He Zhong was actually the direct disciple of a vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect? That's right. Dongfang Quan nodded. Although this news is shocking, it doesn't seem to mean anything to me, right? The battle invitation that He Zhong sent me was only an ordinary battle invitation. It's not a death duel invitation. Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly. "If that's really what you think, then you're gravely mistaken. Although I don't know why he didn't send you a life and death battle invitation, I know that it's definitely not that simple for him to send you a battle invitation." Dongfang Quan said. "It's not that simple? I don't even know him. Don't tell me there's a feud between us?" Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. "There's no feud between you, but what about his uncle?" Dongfang Quan asked again. "His uncle? Who's that?" Duan Lingtian was puzzled. "Lu Huan." Under Duan Lingtian's puzzled gaze, Dongfang Quan spat out the name twice that shocked Duan Lingtian. "Lu Huan? Are you sure?" "This isn't a secret among the sect's high-ranking officials," Dongfang Quan said. "You're from the city governor's estate of Mound Hill City, and you're also the disciple of Feng Hui, the city governor of Mound Hill City. Lu Huan definitely won't let you go. Therefore, I'm looking for you to remind you to be careful of He Zhong." "He Zhong? Lu Huan's nephew?" Duan Lingtian nodded and stood up at the same time. He cupped his hands together and thanked Dongfang Quan. "Thank you for your reminder, Elder Dongfang. Haha, if you're sincere, why don't you give me another 4th grade Saint Stone?" Dongfang Quan laughed. His eyes shone with a cunning gleam. "That's what I should do." Duan Lingtian was not stingy. With a raise of his hand, He took out 2 4th-grade saint stones and 10 5th-grade saint stones and placed them in front of Dongfang Quan. Don't tell me you're a disciple from a 5th-rate force who came out to train and is only temporarily joining our moon illumination sect? Dongfang Quan asked with a smile after putting the saint stones away. Duan Lingtian merely smiled in response to Dongfang Quan's question. He did not reply to him. In front of Dongfang Quan, he still had to maintain a sense of mystery. This sense of mystery could be the key to maintain the relationship between him and Dongfang Quan. It could make Dongfang Quan wary of him and not dare to underestimate him. Elder Dongfang, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Duan Lingtian left after bidding farewell to Dongfang Quan. When he was leaving, Duan Lingtian's face turned grave immediately. Initially, I thought He Zhong only wanted to have an ordinary duel with me. I can't believe he's Lu Huan's nephew. Lu Huan's nephew actually issued an ordinary duel invitation to me. Things are definitely not as simple as it seems. Duan Lingtian was certain of this after learning about He Zhong's identity. Zhou Qi didn't mention this to me. Duan Lingtian suddenly thought of Zhou Qi. He could not help but frown. He instantly felt Zhou Qi was hiding something. However, he soon regained his senses. Perhaps even Zhou Qi himself doesn't know about this. However, Lu Huan has such a nephew, and his nephew has a vice sect leader as his master. Why would he be afraid and even try to curry favor with that inner court elder, Xiaofeng? No matter how high Xiaofeng's position in the Moon Illumination sect's inner court is, it shouldn't be higher than the vice sect leader, right? Duan Lingtian was puzzled by this. If Duan Lingtian knew Xiaofeng's backer was one of the few saint stage powerhouses in the Moon Illumination sect, he would not have thought so. Due to Xiaofeng's backer, even the few vice sect leaders did not dare to offend him. Naturally, only the high-ranking officials in the Moon Illumination sect knew about Xiaofeng's backer. Even the outer court elders and inner court deacons did not know about this, let alone the outer court deacons, inner court disciples, and outer court disciples. 10 days was equivalent to a month on the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. During this 1 month, Duan Lingtian had been cultivating on the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. When the time was up, he left the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and his courtyard and went to the vast training field in the Moon Illumination sect's outer court. The training field was bustling with noise. Not only were the outer court disciples who were not in closed-door cultivation present, but there were also many inner court disciples present as well. The number of inner court disciples present was far more than the number of inner court disciples who came when Duan Lingtian fought Feng Fan a month ago. At that time, there were only a dozen inner court disciples present. This time, there were more than 100 of them present. Some of these inner court disciples were those who had seen Duan Lingtian defeat the inner court disciple, Yinan, outside the Merit Pavilion a month ago. Some of them were those who had seen Duan Lingtian kill the Earth Rankings powerhouse, Feng Fan. Chapter 1469. Senior Brother He Zhong is here. A sharp-eyed outer court disciple exclaimed in surprise. His voice attracted the attention of the people present as well. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a tall young man with a devilish yet handsome appearance walked over with majestic steps. His green robe fluttered in the wind, accentuating his elegance and elegance. Senior Brother He Zhong. Many outer court female disciples' eyes lit up like a hungry wolf that had seen its prey. In the outer court, many outer court female disciples regarded He Zhong as their dream lover. Many outer court female disciples frowned and said, compared to Senior Brother He Zhong, I still prefer Senior Brother Duan Lingtian. Senior Brother Duan Lingtian's handsomeness is masculine. Senior Brother He Zhong's handsomeness, on the other hand, is feminine. That's right. Moreover, I think Senior Brother Duan Lingtian is more handsome. I even dreamt of him yesterday. I dreamt of Senior Brother Duan Lingtian a few days ago as well. I even dreamt of him bringing a palanquin with 8 carriers to marry me. Marry you? Stop dreaming. How would a monstrous genius like Senior Brother Duan Lingtian fall for a commoner like you? Pfft. You make it sound as if Senior Brother Duan Lingtian is interested in you. The outer court female disciples who sided with Duan Lingtian were undoubtedly more. They instantly suppressed the voices of the outer court female disciples who admired Hezhong. Although Duan Lingtian had only been in the Moon Illumination sect for slightly over 3 months, his few moves in the Moon Illumination sect had stunned the entire outer court. In the history of the Moon Illumination sect's outer court, there had never been a genius like Duan Lingtian. Hermph. Everyone has their own preferences. I like senior brother Hezhong the most. An outer court female disciple snorted in dissatisfaction. At once, the group of outer court female disciples began to cause a ruckus again. In the end, it was the group of outer court female disciples who admired Duan Lingtian who overwhelmed the group of outer court female disciples who admired Hezhong. Humph. Although Hezhong did not pay much attention to the competition between the outer court female disciples, he still heard it. For a moment, he coldly snorted as a fierce light flashed across his eyes. Duan Lingtian, from today onwards, you will be a cripple. At that time, I'd like to see who else will love you. Hezhong's mentality was a little twisted. In the past, he did not put the female disciples of the outer sect in his eyes. Even if they expressed their love for him, he only enjoyed the feeling and did not reciprocate. But now, seeing that most of the outer court female disciples were biased towards Duan Lingtian, he couldn't help but feel jealous. It was as if his belongings had been taken away by Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan, senior brother is here. As an excited cry rang out, all the gazes that were originally on Hezhong landed on the purple figure that was slowly walking towards the training field. It was a young man in purple. He was tall and handsome with a pair of dashing eyebrows. There was a bright and sunny smile on his face. Compared to the evil look on Hezhong's face, they were two extremes. Looking at Hezhong's face would make one feel depressed. However, looking at Duan Lingtian's face made one feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. He's Duan Lingtian? He's only 35 years old. He's so young. Among the group of inner court disciples who came to watch the show, there were many who had an extraordinary cultivation base. They boldly probed Duan Lingtian with their secret spiritual tactic. They discovered Duan Lingtian's age immediately. He was 35 years old. Sensing the waves of spiritual energy sweeping towards him, Duan Lingtian frowned a little. However, he soon relaxed again as if he was not bothered. At this moment, he could not be bothered even if he wanted to. There were at least 20 inner court disciples who probed him with their secret spiritual tactic. Could he go over and teach them a lesson one by one? He really did not have the ability to do so now. To the outer court disciples present on the scene, Duan Lingtian's age was not a secret because they had already found out about it 3 months ago. 3 months ago, when Duan Lingtian participated in the entrance assessment of the Moon Illumination sect, the outer court deacon had probed his age with his secret spiritual tactic. Duan Lingtian. Seeing that everyone's attention had shifted from Duan Lingtian to Duan Lingtian with his arrival, Hezhong's face turned grave immediately. Although not many people in the outer court knew that Hezhong was the direct disciple of the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect, Hezhong was still ranked 3rd in the outer court. However, Hezhong was ranked 3rd in the Moon Illumination sect's outer court after all. He was also a powerhouse at the peak of the mortal shedding stage who was ranked 66th on the Earth rankings. However, his limelight was stolen by a guy who had just entered the sect 3 months ago. How could he possibly accept this? An outer court disciple who had just entered the sect 3 months ago had more support in the outer court than an outer court disciple like him who had been in the sect for more than 5 years. He felt like his dignity was being trampled on. It was being trampled on. It was being trampled on. Your junior brother Duan Lingtian? However, when Hezhong turned around to look at Duan Lingtian and greeted Duan Lingtian, the gloomy expression on his face was gone. It was replaced by a friendly smile. Of course, the friendly smile hanging on Hezhong's devilishly handsome face also seemed a little strange. You're Hezhong? Duan Lingtian glanced at Hezhong nonchalantly. Don't you think it's too early for you to call me junior brother? In the martial Tao world, the strong are respected. If you're not as strong as me, don't you think it's a little disrespectful to call me junior brother? After learning about Hezhong's identity, Duan Lingtian knew that Hezhong did not come with good intentions. Therefore, even though it was his first time meeting Hezhong, he was not going to be courteous at all. After all, he and Lu Huan would not rest until one of them was dead. He Zhong was Lu Huan's nephew. He was on the same side as Lu Huan, so it was only natural that he wanted him dead. He felt extremely disgusted when he looked at He Zhong, who was looking at him with a fake smile on his face. Gasp! As soon as Duan Lingtian said that, the group of outer court disciples who were present was in an uproar. They did not expect Duan Lingtian and He Zhong to be so hostile the moment they met. They even suspected that Duan Lingtian and He Zhong had a conflict to begin with. He Zhong did not expect Duan Lingtian to be so arrogant. At that moment, a cold gleam flashed through his eyes. The cold gleam flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, Duan Lingtian still caught it. I was rash. I apologize to you. However, He Zhong did not fly into a rage. Instead, he smiled and apologized to Duan Lingtian. At that moment, he seemed very magnanimous. Look, this is the senior brother He Zhong that I admire. He's so magnanimous. Unlike the senior brother Duan Lingtian that all of you admire. He's so aggressive and unforgiving when he just met senior brother He Zhong. What a narrow-minded man. The outer court female disciple who admired He Zhong exclaimed, narrow-minded? Bah, this is senior brother Duan Lingtian's character. Character, you know? Moreover, since senior brother Duan Lingtian said that, it's obvious that he's confident that he can defeat your senior brother He Zhong and become his senior brother. The outer court female disciple who admired Duan Lingtian replied, unwilling to be left behind. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes. A faint sneer appeared at the corner of his lips. If he did not already know He Zhong's identity, he might have been deceived by He Zhong's friendliness. However, at that moment, he became even more vigilant. It was obvious that He Zhong was trying to make him lower his guard by pretending to be weak so that he could deal him a fatal blow at the critical moment. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I hope he'll behave himself. Otherwise, I, Duan Lingtian, am not a pushover that anyone can bully. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. At the same time, Duan Lingtian glanced at He Zhong nonchalantly. Then, he walked directly to the center of the training field and turned around to look at He Zhong. Let's begin. My time is limited. I'll have to go back and cultivate after I defeat you. Defeat me? He Zhong smiled faintly. It seems like, Duan Lingtian, you're very confident in your ability as well. Don't tell me you're not confident. If that's the case, then there's no need for this battle. You can just admit defeat. Duan Lingtian replied nonchalantly. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, even though He Zhong suppressed his anger and did not explode, it was difficult for him to pretend to be polite in front of Duan Lingtian. He snorted with a straight face. I've long heard that Duan Lingtian has a powerful mouth. Now that I've seen it for myself, I can see that you really live up to your reputation. Powerful mouth? Duan Lingtian smiled and said sarcastically, since you think my mouth is powerful, then there's no need for you to speak anymore, right? Wouldn't it be more straightforward to just attack? Do you really think that no one in the outer court can deal with you just because you killed Feng Fan and defeated an inner court disciple at the early Saint Rudiment stage? Faced with Duan Lingtian's sarcasm, He Zhong, who did not have a good temper to begin with, could no longer hold back his anger and vented it completely. Even if you're ranked 99th on the Earth ranking, you're still nothing in my eyes. Since you want me to attack, then I'll fulfill your wish. When He Zhong reached the end of his sentence, he smirked coldly. With a raise of his hand, a 3-foot-long green sword that looked like a willow twig appeared in his hand. Although the 3-foot-long green sword was slender, it was perfectly straight in He Zhong's hand. As true energy was infused into it, it exuded waves of sharp aura. This sharp aura was far from what an ordinary 3-foot-long green sword could compare to. Saint inscription? When Duan Lingtian sensed this trace of aura, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He realized that the 3-foot-long green sword that looked like a willow twig in He Zhong's hand was also a saint weapon that was inscribed with a saint inscription. Duan Lingtian, I'll let you know soon. Even if you can kill Feng Fan, you're still nothing in my eyes. The 3-foot-long green sword in He Zhong's hand trembled and immediately bent like a spirit snake. It was extremely flexible. You said my mouth is powerful, but yours isn't too bad either. A sneer crept up on the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth as he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. You're seeking death. He Zhong's gaze turned cold. The 3-foot-long green sword in his hand trembled and instantly straightened again. Chapter 1470. Horizontal Lightning Sword. It was the single-target offensive technique from the human-rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactic that He Zhong cultivated. He had cultivated it to the 4th stage, the proficiency stage. Now, as he performed the movement technique, the horizontal stride, he arrived in front of Duan Lingtian in just a blink of an eye. Whoosh! The 3-foot-long green sword that was as thin as a willow twig in his hand was like a sharp thorn as it charged toward Duan Lingtian. Horizontal Lightning Sword. The sword was so fast that a piercing sound could be heard in the air. The piercing sound seemed to be able to penetrate everything, causing the onlookers' faces to turn grave. Naturally, some of the outer court disciples with a lower cultivation base did not have time to hear the piercing sound at all. Heavy as Mount Tai. In the face of He Zhong's sword, Duan Lingtian took out the 1,000-mass sword at a leisurely pace and activated the 1,000-mass Saint inscription on it. He swung the sword horizontally as though he was lifting a mountain and smashing it toward He Zhong's sword that was charging at him. "You're overestimating yourself." He Zhong smirked in the face of the scene. The true energy on the sword in his hand pulsated like green electric snakes, emitting an oppressive aura. As soon as the aura appeared, Duan Lingtian's face turned grave. This aura gave him a feeling of invincibility. It was as though the sword in He Zhong's hand had undergone an earth-shattering change at that moment and became invincible. Rumble. The 1,000-mass sword pierced through the air and brought along a series of rumbles as it charged toward He Zhong's horizontal lightning sword. From the beginning until the end, He Zhong's horizontal lightning sword had been moving in a straight line, and it didn't have the slightest intention of changing direction to dodge. It pierced straight towards the 1,000-mass sword that Duan Lingtian swung and smashed out. In the face of the heavy sword that was charging at him like a mountain, he was fearless. Finally, the sword in He Zhong's hand hit Duan Lingtian's 1,000-mass sword. Just when the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled up into a sneer, thinking that he would be able to send He Zhong flying with his sword, a sudden change occurred. A terrifying scene appeared before his eyes. The terrifying scene caused the smirk on his face to freeze instantly. He was shocked to see. The sword in He Zhong's hand actually seemed to be indestructible. When the 1,000-catty heavy sword in his hand was raised and smashed out, it pierced through the vital energy that covered the 1,000-catty heavy sword. After piercing through the 1,000-mass sword, the 3-foot-long blade that was as thin as a willow twig seemed to have transformed into a poisonous snake as it bit toward him. Its speed was shocking Ai's heart's eye. Strange pupil. In the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy swept out and entered his left eye as he activated the strange pupil. At that moment, Duan Lingtian was eyes lightning eye. He also took advantage of this opportunity to quickly dodge to the side. However, he soared. He Zhong's sword brushed past his arm and tore his robe, causing a splash of fresh blood to spurt out. It penetrated his flesh. The tearing pain immediately traveled through his nerves to Duan Lingtian's consciousness. Duan Lingtian could not help but gasp. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian quickly retreated. He Zhong did not pursue him. Instead, he looked down at Duan Lingtian from above. His eyes were filled with mockery. "Duan Lingtian, that's all there is to you? What saint inscription is that? It can actually pierce through the 1,000-mass sword." The 1,000-mass sword is an earth-rank primitive saint weapon. Duan Lingtian felt a lingering fear when he recalled the earlier scene. He looked at the sword in He Zhong's hand with a hint of dread in his eyes. Not only did the sword ignore the impact of the 1,000-mass sword, but it even pierced through his true energy and 1,000-mass sword as it headed toward him. The hole on the 1,000-mass sword's body was extremely glaring. The 1,000-mass sword was pierced through. Don't tell me that's the penetration saint inscription? An inner disciple sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed in surprise. The penetration saint inscription? The moment his words left his mouth, the entire place went into an uproar as expected. The sword in senior brother He Zhong's hand is actually inscribed with a 3-star saint inscription. The penetration saint inscription? As far as I know, Even in the Merit Pavilion, saint weapons inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions are rare. They only appear occasionally. Moreover, the moment they appear, the inner court elders will buy them all. In the sect, only the inner court elders and above have the wealth to purchase a saint weapon inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions. A saint weapon inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions costs at least 1,000,000 merit points. The group of onlookers discussed among themselves. Their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Hezhong. That sword seems a little familiar. An inner court disciple frowned as he looked at the sword in Hezhong's hand. He seemed to be trying to recall something. A moment later, his eyes lit up as he exclaimed, "I remember now. That's the sword of our inner court's Elder Lu Huan. I was fortunate enough to see Elder Lu Huan using this sword before. A saint weapon inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions will never appear twice in the Moon Illumination sect. It's obvious that the sword in Hezhong's hand is Elder Lu Huan's sword." Elder Lu Huan's sword? I've never heard of Hezhong being related to Elder Lu Huan. How does he have Elder Lu Huan's sword? Many inner court disciples looked at Hezhong in shock. Perhaps Hezhong is a direct disciple that Elder Lu Huan secretly took in? As far as I know, the sect's senior officials like to secretly take ingenious disciples in the outer court as their disciples. Their identities will only be made public after they enter the inner court. An inner court disciple said, "I've heard about that as well. It seems like Hezhong must be a disciple that Elder Lu Huan secretly cultivated." Another inner court disciple chimed in, "Lu Huan?" Upon hearing the group of inner court disciples' discussion, many of the onlookers' eyes lit up. Elder Lu Huan has finally made his move? Unfortunately, this isn't a death duel. The outer court elder, Huang Cheng, who had arrived at the scene and was hiding by the side to watch the battle, smirked coldly. However, even if it's not a death duel, with the enmity between Elder Lu Huan and the city governor of Mount Hill City, Feng Hui, I'm sure he won't let this Duanlingtian go so easily. The enmity between Lu Huan and Feng Hui was not a secret in the Moon Illumination sect. Therefore, after learning that Duanlingtian came from Mount Hill City, Huang Cheng had been waiting for Duanlingtian to get into trouble. Huang Cheng was the outer court elder who had lost more than 300,000 merit points to Duanlingtian more than a month ago. For more than a month, he had been keeping an eye on Duanlingtian. As soon as Duanlingtian dared to leave the sect, he would kill Duanlingtian immediately. Unfortunately, he had been keeping an eye on Duanlingtian for more than a month, but Duanlingtian did not seem to have any intention of leaving the sect to train. Elder Lu Huan? The outer court deacon, Deng Wei, smiled as well. With Elder Lu Huan's people making a move, this Duanlingtian will be crippled even if he doesn't die. With Hezhong's position in the outer court, even if Duanlingtian is crippled, he'll only be punished moderately. Although Duanlingtian was a genius martial cultivator, if he was crippled, he would lose his value to the Moon Illumination sect. Hezhong, on the other hand, was very valuable. Naturally, the Moon Illumination sect would not cripple Hezhong. Naturally, if Hezhong dared to kill Duanlingtian, he would not be able to escape death. This was because that was the Moon Illumination sect's rule. If someone managed to survive after killing someone, the Moon Illumination sect's prestige would no longer exist. Nobody would abide by the Moon Illumination sect's rule in the future. Duanlingtian. Yiman was present as well. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Duanlingtian was from Mount Hill City, and he had heard about the enmity between him and the inner court elder, Lu Huan, since he had been in the Moon Illumination sect for more than 3 months. Therefore, he also felt that Hezhong would not let Duanlingtian go so easily. Unlike before, Yiman could not wait for Duanlingtian to be crippled. If that was the case, it would be much easier for him to kill Duanlingtian. 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, Lu Huan's sword? Duanlingtian's face turned slightly grave. He did not expect Lu Huan to lend his sword to Hezhong just to deal with him. However, the power of the 3-star saint inscription still shocked Duanlingtian. When he went to the Merit Pavilion previously, he did not see any saint weapons inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions. Otherwise, he would have definitely bought one. Horizontal stride. Horizontal lightning sword. When He Zhong heard the surrounding inner court disciples pointing out the origin of the sword in his hand, he immediately made his move again. This time, the target of the sword in his hand was Duan Lingtian's right hand that was holding the thousand-mass sword. It was as though he wanted to cut off Duan Lingtian's right arm. Faced with He Zhong's viciousness, Duan Lingtian's face turned completely grave. In the next moment, he immediately activated the strange pupil. Endless spiritual energy continued to gather in Duan Lingtian's left eye, causing a small whirlpool to appear in the middle of Duan Lingtian's left eye. The whirlpool's spinning speed continued to increase until it reached its limit. At this moment, he had no choice but to use the strange pupil. As the person who ranked third in the outer court, He Zhong's strength was extraordinary. Coupled with the sword that was inscribed with the 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, Duan Lingtian could not block it at all. He activated the strange pupil. Space shift. At that moment, the sword in He Zhong's hand was also shifted to the side, allowing it to pass through Duan Lingtian's right arm. Just when Duan Lingtian sighed in relief, he was surprised to see that He Zhong's eyes revealed a hint of realization. However, there was no hint of panic in his eyes. It was as though he had already known that this would happen. He already knew? Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Duan Lingtian, Feng Fan must have died under your spiritual secret tactic, right? Your spiritual secret tactic is indeed extraordinary to be able to shift the horizontal lightning sword that I stabbed out with all my might. However, it's time for all of this to end. He Zhong's true energy voice transmission pierced Duan Lingtian's eardrums, confirming Duan Lingtian's ominous feeling. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that a yellow piece of paper appeared in He Zhong's other hand. There were some complicated veins drawn on it. It's a Dao talisman. When the crowd recognized the Dao talisman, Duan Lingtian naturally recognized it as well. The Dao talisman shot straight toward Duan Lingtian. Lin. Chapter 1471. Appear. Almost at the same time as He Zhong shouted the word appear, another appear echoed in the air. It was precisely Duan Lingtian who shouted the word descend. When He Zhong's true energy voice transmission pierced Duan Lingtian's eardrums, an ominous feeling rose in Duan Lingtian's heart. His entire body and mind were on full alert at that moment. When he saw He Zhong taking out the Dao talisman, he knew the reason for He Zhong's confidence. As it turned out, He Zhong wanted to use the Dao talisman to deal with him. Naturally, he believed He Zhong would not dare to kill him with the Dao talisman. However, He Zhong would definitely dare to cripple him. Perhaps this was He Zhong's motive. Due to this reason, when He Zhong took out the Dao talisman, Duan Lingtian raised his hand and grabbed a Dao talisman in his hand as well. When He Zhong's Dao talisman shot out, he shouted appear to activate the Dao talisman's power. At the critical moment, Duan Lingtian also shouted appear and activated the Dao talisman's power in his hand. A non-offensive Dao talisman could be used without being thrown out. In the air, the Dao talisman that He Zhong threw out exploded instantly and transformed into 4 extremely fast rays of light that shot toward Duan Lingtian's limbs. It was as though they wanted to tear Duan Lingtian's limbs apart. One could imagine that if the 4 rays of light succeeded, Duan Lingtian would definitely become a limbless cripple. The speed of the 4 rays of light was so fast that only a handful of people on the scene could see it clearly. 2-star offensive Dao talisman. The outer court elder, Huang Cheng, was one of the few people who could see the trajectory of the 4 rays of light. His eyes lit up immediately when he saw that He Zhong had used a 2-star offensive saint inscription. The energy contained in it was comparable to the attack of a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. The other outer court elders' expressions turned solemn. They did not expect He Zhong to be so ruthless as to want to cripple Duan Lingtian with a Dao talisman. Duan Lingtian, after today, you are destined to become a cripple. The outer court deacon, Deng Wei, had a bright smile on his face. It was as if he could already see the scene of Duan Lingtian's limbs being cut off. If Duan Lingtian was crippled, it would undoubtedly be a good thing for him. This was undoubtedly good news for his nephew. However, in the next moment, the expressions of the people who clearly saw the trajectory of the 4 sharp lights that burst out from the 2-star offensive Dao talisman froze. This was because they only saw a flash in front of their eyes before they realized that Duan Lingtian had disappeared in front of them. From the beginning to the end, they did not know how Duan Lingtian disappeared. It's a 3-star divine strider talisman. Soon, one of the outer court elders cried out in surprise and was the first to react. Just now, when Duan Lingtian shouted Lin, he also heard it and realized that Duan Lingtian had also used a Dao talisman. A Dao talisman that could make Duan Lingtian disappear in front of his eyes could only be a 3-star divine strider talisman. The highest grade of divine strider talisman in the Moon Illumination sect was 3-star. For this reason, he immediately confirmed that Duan Lingtian had used a 3-star divine strider talisman. Although a 3-star divine strider talisman cost 300,000 merit points, it was impossible for an ordinary outer court disciple to afford it. However, Duan Lingtian was not an ordinary outer court disciple. He had earned almost 2 million merit points more than a month ago. It was not difficult for him to buy a 3-star divine strider talisman. A 3-star divine strider talisman. Upon hearing the outer court elder's exclamation, Huang Chang and Deng Wei's face turned grave immediately. Impossible. In the training field, horror dawned on He Zhong's face when he saw the 4 sharp lights that burst out from the Dao talisman that he shot out missed Duan Lingtian after he disappeared. Disbelief was written all over his face. Nothing's impossible. Just when He Zhong was pushed a distance away by the inertia and barely managed to stop himself, a calm yet terrifying voice resonated in his ears. After using the 3-star divine strider talisman, Duan Lingtian, whose speed was comparable to a Paramount Saint rudiment stage powerhouse, appeared next to He Zhong like a ghost. Bang! Before the onlookers, including the few outer court elders, could react, He Zhong was sent flying out like an arrow that was shot out from a bow. He crashed hard on the ground in a wretched manner. Slap! Just as He Zhong was about to struggle to stand up, a crisp sound of a slap rang out. On his face, there was a fiery red palm print. Duan Lingtian, if you're so capable, come out and fight me with your sword and spear. What's the point of being so sneaky? He Zhong spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth as he gritted his teeth. Upon hearing He Zhong's words, the group of onlookers had a strange expression on their faces. Did he say Duan Lingtian had the ability to fight him with his sword and spear? Did he say Duan Lingtian was sneaky? Wasn't he the one who used the Dao talisman first earlier? This He Zhong is too shameless. How can he say something like that? Right now, Duan Lingtian is just giving him a taste of his own medicine. An inner court disciple glanced at He Zhong in disdain and said. The other inner court disciples agreed with his words. Even the group of outer court disciples agreed with him. They felt that He Zhong only had himself to blame. Fight with my sword and spear? Do you think you're worthy? Duan Lingtian's sneer resonated in the entire training field. However, nobody could see his figure at all. After using the 3-star divine strider talisman, Duan Lingtian's speed was comparable to a Paramount Saint rudiment stage martial or Dao cultivator. He could even maintain it for 15 minutes. As long as he was moving, unless it was someone who was an inner court elder or above in the Moon Illumination sect, it would be difficult for anyone to catch his trace. Even the few outer court elders could only vaguely catch a glimpse of Duan Lingtian's afterimage the moment he made his move. Apart from that, they could not see Duan Lingtian's figure clearly at all. Slap! Another crisp slap resonated in the air. The other side of He Zhong's face began to swell as well. His entire body turned into a pig's head. His handsome face no longer existed. Duan Lingtian, how dare you humiliate me like this? Do you know who my master is? He Zhong roared. I'm not interested in knowing who your master is. All I know is that you want to cripple me. If that's the case, I'll cripple you too. Duan Lingtian's voice was extremely cold. He Zhong was so frightened that horror dawned on him. He immediately said, I admit. He wanted to open his mouth and admit defeat. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was slapped by Duan Lingtian again. He forcefully swallowed the word that he was about to say. Subsequently, every time he wanted to open his mouth and admit defeat, Duan Lingtian would slap him to stop him. In the end, he became completely obedient. Duan Lingtian, as long as you don't cripple me, I promise I'll never be your enemy again. Under the watchful eyes of the others, He Zhong gave in completely. He was afraid. If he was crippled by Duan Lingtian, he would have no future to speak of. Faced with a crisis that concerned his future, He Zhong had no choice but to lower his arrogant head. Never be my enemy again? Duan Lingtian smirked disdainfully. Do you think I'll believe you? Currently, Duan Lingtian had completely taken control of the situation. His speed was comparable to a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. Just his speed alone was enough to send chills down He Zhong's spine. In the martial Tao in the world, only speed was invincible. This was especially true when Duan Lingtian's speed was so ridiculously fast. I'll make an oath right now. Afraid Duan Lingtian would suddenly attack him, He Zhong hurriedly pricked his finger and used the tribulation oath to swear he would never be Duan Lingtian's enemy again. Boom, 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 boom. 9 deafening claps of thunder bore witness to He Zhong's oath. You're quite bold, Duan Lingtian sneered. However, you almost crippled my limbs today, and even made me waste a precious 3-star Divine Strider talisman. Do you think you'll be able to cover up what happened today just by swearing an oath? I can compensate you for the 3-star Divine Strider talisman. He Zhong took a deep breath and said, It's only right that you compensate me with the 3-star Divine Strider talisman. Also, if you want to keep your limbs, you'll have to show your sincerity. Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly. Although he could not wait to cripple He Zhong's limbs and give him a taste of his own medicine, Lu Huan was the reason behind Lu Huan's actions. However, when he thought about how the culprit was Lu Huan, even if he crippled He Zhong, he would not be able to change anything. At once, he thought of another way to solve the problem. Extortion. What do you want? He Zhong looked at Duan Lingtian warily. 1 million merit points to buy your limbs. Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly, I think your limbs are still worth these merit points, right? 1 million merit points. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the entire place was in an uproar. Oh my god, this Duan Lingtian has such a huge appetite. He actually wants 1 million merit points from He Zhong. Many inner court disciples clicked their tongues. It was obvious they were shocked by Duan Lingtian's words. Senior brother Duan Lingtian wants so many merit points. I'm afraid senior brother He Zhong can't afford it, right? Many outer court disciples mumbled with a dazed expression on their faces. Even the outer court elders and deacons who were present were shocked by Duan Lingtian's exorbitant demand. 1 million merit points. None of them would be able to take out so many merit points in one go. Although He Zhong knew Duan Lingtian would ask for an exorbitant price, he did not expect Duan Lingtian to have such a huge appetite to ask for 1 million merit points in one go. At once, He Zhong's face turned grave. I don't have that many merit points. Of course, I know you don't have that many merit points. You can just ask the person who ordered you to pay for these merit points. I think he has no reason not to pay for your limbs, right? Duan Lingtian smirked. Even if he doesn't care about the kinship between the two of you, I'm sure he'll do something for you, who's helping him, for the sake of your master, right? Duan Lingtian spoke to He Zhong through true energy voice transmission. You actually know about this? He Zhong was dumbfounded. It turned out that Duan Lingtian already knew about his background. At this moment, an unparalleled sense of defeat rose in his heart. Uncle, it seems like you have no choice but to pay for it this time. At this moment, He Zhong's heart was filled with helplessness and bitterness. Make another oath. Say that you'll send 1 million merit points and a 3-star Divine Strider talisman to me tomorrow. If you can't do it, you'll be struck to death by the lightning penalty. Chapter 1472. Duan Lingtian only let him go when He Zhong swore on the 9-9 heavenly tribulation again. This speed. It feels so good. Duan Lingtian, who was boosted by the 3-star Divine Strider talisman, and whose speed was comparable to a Paramount Mortal Shedding stage powerhouse, began to wander around the outer court after He Zhong swore on his oath. He was so fast that even the outer court elders could not catch him. However, the effect of the 3-star Divine Strider talisman was limited after all. After wandering around the outer court for a while, the effect disappeared and Duan Lingtian returned to his original state. At the same time, The news of Duan Lingtian defeating He Zhong spread to the inner court like a hurricane, causing Duan Lingtian to be in the limelight again. Although He Zhong was only an outer court disciple, he was ranked 66th on the Earth rankings in the 9 Sect Alliances district. He was so famous in the 9 Sect Alliances district that he even surpassed some of the ordinary inner court elders in the Moon Illumination sect. However, such a person was defeated by Duan Lingtian, an outer court disciple who had just entered the sect 3 months ago. Duan Lingtian had successfully replaced He Zhong and became the person who was ranked 66th on the Earth rankings. He Zhong, on the other hand, switched places with Duan Lingtian and was now ranked 99th on the Earth ranking. This position originally belonged to Feng Fan. In the inner court district, Duan Lingtian's name spread out again, causing many inner court disciples to click their tongues repeatedly. All this while, as long as it's someone from Mount Hill City, they would not be able to gain any advantage when facing Elder Lu Huan's group. However, this Duan Lingtian actually made Elder Lu Huan's group suffer a loss. He's really something. Many inner court disciples knew about the enmity between the inner court Elder Lu Huan and the city governor of Mount Hill City, Feng Hui. They could not help but be shocked. The news of He Zhong being Lu Huan's disciple also spread out. All in all, Lu Huan was greatly humiliated this time. In Lu Huan's mansion in the inner court, smack! The enraged Lu Huan raised his hand and slammed his palm forward, shattering the stone table in front of him. 1 3-star Divine Strider Talisman for 1 million merit points? He really had a big appetite. Isn't he afraid of eating himself to death? His appetite has always been huge. It is said that he earned nearly 2 million merit points a month ago. He Zhong sighed. Uncle, I know you're not willing to accept this, but I've already made a vow. He Zhong reminded Lu Huan. Little Zhong, don't worry. Uncle won't let you go back on your words. Isn't it just a 3-star Godly Strider Talisman and 1 million merit points? Uncle can still afford it. Lu Huan took a deep breath. When he looked at He Zhong, his expression softened a little. However, the anger in the depths of his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. However, that Duan Lingtian is really bold. He actually beat you up like this. Looking at He Zhong, whose face was still swollen, Lu Huan said angrily, Little Zhong, are you really willing to accept this? Uncle, I know what you mean, but I've already made a vow that I'll never go against him again. Therefore, please don't make things difficult for me. I don't want to be killed by the 99 heavenly tribulations lightning punishment. How could He Zhong not know what Lu Huan meant? It was without a doubt that Lu Huan wanted to continue dragging him into the water so that they could deal with the Duan Lingtian together. At this moment, he was starting to regret agreeing to Lu Huan's request. Otherwise, he would not have been so humiliated. Although he did not suffer any substantial loss, the humiliation was enough to cause his position in the outer court to plummet. I know you've made a vow, but Vice Sect Leader Zhang, Lu Huan's eyes gleamed. However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by He Zhong. Uncle, it's not up to me to interfere with what Master will do. Since I've already made a vow that I'll never go against that Duan Lingtian again, it's only natural that I won't go to Master to instigate him. Otherwise, the tribulation of the oath will definitely think that I've broken my vow and send down the lightning punishment. There's no need for you to say that. I'll tell Vice Sect Leader Zhang about this. I'm sure Vice Sect Leader Zhang won't let go of someone who humiliated his direct disciple. When Lu Huan reached the end of his sentence, a cold smile appeared on his face. He Zhong glanced at Lu Huan indifferently but did not say anything. If that was the case, he would not be considered as breaking his vow. Uncle, about the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman and 1 million merit points. He Zhong looked at Lu Huan and reminded him, intentionally or otherwise. I'll transfer 4 million merit points to you. You can purchase the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman from the Merit Pavilion. As for the extra 100,000 merit points, take it as my compensation to you. After all, I'm the one who asked you to deal with that Duan Lingtian. Lu Huan took out his crystal card and transferred 4 million merit points to He Zhong without any hesitation. All right, He Zhong nodded. He was very satisfied with Lu Huan's tactfulness. After He Zhong left, Lu Huan's face turned completely gloomy. 4 million merit points were gone just like that. It was impossible for him not to feel the pinch. His entire net worth was no more than 1.6 million merit points. In just a short while, he had lost almost 90% of his merit points. Duan Lingtian. If you don't die, I, Lu Huan, won't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Lu Huan thought to himself as his eyes gleamed coldly. Subsequently, Lu Huan began to rack his brain to think of a way to get rid of Duan Lingtian once and for all. Early the next morning, He Zhong went to look for Duan Lingtian. Not bad, you're quite trustworthy. After receiving the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman and the 1 million merit points that He Zhong transferred to him, Duan Lingtian nodded in satisfaction. When He Zhong heard this, a wry smile appeared on his face. How could he not keep his word? He had made an oath using the 9-9 Heavenly Tribulation Oath. If he did not keep his oath, he would definitely not live to see the next day. After He Zhong passed the Dao Talisman and the merit points to Duan Lingtian, he did not stay any longer and left immediately. Although he had made an oath that he would no longer be enemies with Duan Lingtian, it did not mean that he could face Duan Lingtian calmly. Right now, all he wanted to do was to stay as far away from Duan Lingtian as possible. To him, Duan Lingtian was no different from a nightmare. It's a good thing I bought a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman when I went to the Merit Pavilion. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to escape yesterday. When Duan Lingtian recalled what happened yesterday, fear still lingered in his heart. If it was not for the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, he would not have been able to dodge the offensive Dao Talisman that He Zhong threw at him yesterday. That offensive Dao Talisman was a 2-star offensive Dao Talisman. The energy contained in it was comparable to the full force of a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse once it was unleashed. It seems like I can't save the merit points that I used to buy the Dao Talisman. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian left the small courtyard and went to the Merit Pavilion of the Moon Illumination sect again. Unlike the last time he came to the Merit Pavilion, most of the inner court disciples recognized him when he came to the Merit Pavilion this time. After arriving at the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian did not stay on the first level of the Merit Pavilion. Instead, he went up the stairs directly. His target was the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. The 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion was where Dao Talismans were sold. When Duan Lingtian passed by the 2nd level of the Merit Pavilion, he realized the person on duty was not Elder Fonggon. Therefore, he went up to the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion directly. Duan Lingtian. The 2 inner court deacons on duty on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion were still the same as before. When they saw Duan Lingtian, their eyes were filled with complicated emotions. They had heard about what happened yesterday. He had defeated He Zhong, the Earth Rankings powerhouse who was suspected to be the disciple of Inner Court's Elder Lu Huan, and extorted 1 million merit points and a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. When they first heard about Duan Lingtian's valiance, they were rendered speechless. In the history of the Moon Illumination sect, it seemed like there had never been such a valiant person before. Duan Lingtian nodded at the 2 of them. Then, he put down his spatial ring and entered the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion directly. This time, apart from buying a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, he also bought 2 3-star Golden Energy Talismans. When Duan Lingtian was buying offensive Dao Talismans, he realized there were no 3-star offensive Dao Talismans on sale, so he could only buy a 2-star offensive Dao Talisman. At this moment, he had 2 3-star Divine Strider Talismans, 3-star Golden Energy Talismans, and 2-star offensive Dao Talismans in his hands. At the entrance of the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian, who had spent 900,000 merit points, could not help but ask, "May I ask why there are no 3-star offensive Dao Talismans on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion?" Once a 3-star offensive Dao Talisman was activated, its power was comparable to the full force of a Paramount Saint Rudiment Stage Marshal or Dao Cultivator. Naturally, it was only an ordinary Paramount Saint Rudiment Stage Marshal or Dao Cultivator. We don't have any 3-star offensive Dao Talismans in the Moon Illumination sect. One of the inner court deacons shook his head and said, "Among all the Dao Talismans, the offensive Dao Talisman is the most difficult to inscribe. Although the offensive Dao Talisman can be used up in just a blink of an eye, its value is still incomparable to the Divine Strider Dao Talismans and Golden Energy Dao Talismans. If you want to buy a 3-star offensive Dao Talisman, You'll have to buy it at the Nine Sect Alliance's headquarters. The other inner court deacon said. The Nine Sect Alliance's headquarters? Duan Lingtian was stunned. The Nine Sect Alliance's headquarters is located in the biggest city in the Nine Sect Alliance's district, Hanyang City. If you want to buy a 3-star offensive Dao talisman, you'll have to go to Hanyang City. The inner court deacon who spoke first said again, Understood. Duan Lingtian nodded and asked again, May I ask where Elder Fonggon lives? After learning the approximate location of Elder Fonggon's residence from the 2 inner court deacons, Duan Lingtian left the Merit Pavilion and went to the inner court district. This was his first time entering the inner court district since he came to the Moon Illumination sect. The biggest difference between the inner court district and the outer court district was the cultivation environment. The density of the heaven and earth spirit energy here was much higher than the outer court district. Not only that, the deeper he went, the denser the heaven and earth spirit energy he could feel. The 7th grade Saint Stone Reserve of the Moon Illumination sect is obviously in the central district of the Moon Illumination sect's estate. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to figure this out. The closer he was to the Saint Stone Reserve, the denser the heaven and earth spirit energy was. Not only that, but the inner court district was also much larger than the outer court district. It stretched as far as the eye could see. Following the directions given by the 2 inner court deacons, Duan Lingtian arrived at an area east of the inner court district. Chapter 1473. Senior Brother, do you know which mansion belongs to Elder Fonggon? Duan Lingtian stopped an inner court disciple who was passing by and asked politely. That mansion, is it? The inner court disciple pointed at a mansion not far away and replied. Thank you, Senior Brother. Duan Lingtian quickly thanked him and walked toward the mansion at the same time. An outer court disciple looking for Elder Fonggon? The inner court disciple was slightly surprised when he saw the outer court disciple identity token on Duan Lingtian's waist. In the Moon Illumination sect, the gap between an outer court disciple and an inner court elder was like a chasm. Theoretically, it was impossible for them to cross paths. When Duan Lingtian arrived at Fonggon's mansion, he was stopped by an old man. Senior, is this Elder Fonggon's mansion? Duan Lingtian looked at the skinny old man in front of him and asked politely, Is there anything you need from my young master? The old man asked back, Young master? Upon hearing the old man's words, Duan Lingtian was stunned at first. Then, he realized the young master the old man mentioned was Elder Fonggon. Senior, please pass the message on my behalf. Just say that outer court disciple Duan Lingtian is here to see Elder Fonggon. Duan Lingtian smiled. You're Duan Lingtian? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the old man's eyes lit up. It was obvious he had heard of Duan Lingtian. In the next moment, he looked at Duan Lingtian's waist. To be more precise, he was looking at the outer court disciple identity token on Duan Lingtian's waist. Young master has instructed me to bring you in directly if you're here to look for him. As the old man spoke, he led Duan Lingtian in. Duan Lingtian never imagined that Elder Fonggon would care so much about him, and for a moment, he was extremely touched in his heart. Under the old man's lead, Duan Lingtian met Elder Fonggon in the backyard of the mansion. Elder Fonggon was watering the vegetable garden in the backyard. He looked very serious and didn't even know that they had arrived. Young master, Duan Lingtian is here. The old man looked at Fonggon and said respectfully, Duan Lingtian? When Elder Fonggon heard this, he immediately stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at Duan Lingtian. It really is you. Why? Why are you looking for an old man like me? What can I do for you? Fonggon asked with a smile. I do need Elder Fonggon's help. Duan Lingtian nodded. As the saying goes, one never visits a temple without a cause. If it wasn't for a cause, he wouldn't have come looking for Fonggon. While Duan Lingtian and Fonggon were conversing, the old man who had led Duan Lingtian in quietly retreated. I've told you before that you can look for me if you need anything. As long as it's within my ability, I won't reject it. Fonggon gestured for Duan Lingtian to sit at the stone table in the backyard and poured him a cup of tea. Thank you, Elder Fonggon. After Duan Lingtian thanked him, he explained his purpose of visit. Elder Fonggon, I'm here today to ask you, Is there a saint inscription master who can inscribe 3-star saint inscriptions on saint weapons in the Moon Illumination sect? Yes. Fong Gong nodded. In our Moon Illumination sect, most of the high-ranking officials who are inner court elders and above have a saint weapon inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions. These saint weapons all came from the hands of Elder Bailey. Elder Bailey? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. Elder Bailey is the only 3-star saint inscription master in our Moon Illumination sect. At the same time, he's also the revered elder of our Moon Illumination sect. His position in our Moon Illumination sect is equivalent to the vice sect leader. Due to his special identity as a saint inscription master, even the sect leader and the few saint stage powerhouses in the sect are very courteous when they see him. This is something that the few vice sect leaders of our Moon Illumination sect can't compare to. Fong Gong said. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this. A 3-star saint inscription master would be treated well even in a 6th-rate force, let alone in a 7th-rate force, the Moon Illumination sect. I wonder if it's possible for me to ask Elder Bailey to inscribe a saint inscription on a saint weapon? Duan Lingtian asked Fong Gong in anticipation after taking a deep breath. This was the reason he came to look for Fong Gong. Ever since he saw the 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, on He Zhong's sword yesterday, he wanted to inscribe a penetration saint inscription on his sun shooting bow as well. In that case, the arrow that he shot out from his sun shooting bow would have a powerful penetration attribute. Once the arrow was shot out, it would be able to pierce through everything. Naturally, even if the saint inscription masters in the Dao Martial Saint Land could inscribe a saint inscription master on the sun shooting bow, it was not something the saint inscription masters in the Moon Illumination sect could do. Duan Lingtian wanted to inscribe a penetration saint inscription on the bowstring of the sun shooting bow. The bowstring of the sun shooting bow was the dragon tendon of a 5-clawed devil dragon. Although it was challenging to inscribe a saint inscription on it, it was much easier compared to inscribing a saint inscription on the sun shooting bow. Inscribe a saint inscription? What kind of saint inscription do you want Elder Bailey to inscribe? Fong Gong asked curiously. Penetration saint inscription. Duan Lingtian said bluntly. Penetration saint inscription? A 3-star saint inscription similar to the one on Lu Huan's sword? It was obvious Fong Gong knew the saint inscription on Lu Huan's sword was a penetration saint inscription. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. The most powerful saint-grade martial tactic I cultivate is my archery skill. I'm thinking if I can inscribe a penetration saint inscription on my bowstring, the arrows I shoot out will have the penetration attribute and its power will increase tremendously. If the penetration saint inscription is inscribed, its power will definitely increase tremendously once it's activated, Fong Gong said. However, it's not easy to get Elder Bailey to inscribe a 3-star saint inscription for you. Elder Bailey always depends on his mood when he inscribes a 3-star saint inscription. For this reason, not every inner court elder has a saint weapon inscribed with a 3-star saint inscription even in the inner court. Duan Lingtian was mentally prepared for this. Those who were truly capable were those who had their own independent personalities. Since you've come to the inner court, I'll bring you to visit Elder Bailey. I'll try my best to convince him. However, it's not up to me to decide whether he'll agree or not. Fong Gong gave Duan Lingtian a heads-up beforehand. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded. In that case, let's go to Elder Bailey's mansion. Fong Gong stood up and said. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was more than happy to see Fong Gong was so concerned about his matter and wanted to bring him to Elder Bailey immediately. After leaving Fong Gong's mansion side by side, Duan Lingtian learned a little about Elder Bailey from Fong Gong along the way. He found out Elder Bailey's full name was Bailey Hong, and that he had joined the Moon Illumination sect 30 years ago. When he joined the Moon Illumination sect, he was already a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. He was only a step away from the Saint stage. However, many years had passed, and he was still at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. The Saint stage is too difficult. I've already broken through to the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage for 20 years, but I still can't take the last step. Fong Gong could not help but sigh when he mentioned Bai Li Hong's cultivation base. Similar to Bai Li Hong, his cultivation base was stuck at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. He could not take another step forward to enter the Saint stage. Although there was only a step between the paramount Saint Rudiment stage and the Saint stage, the difference in their strength was like heaven and earth. The weakest Saint stage powerhouse could easily kill dozens of paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses if they joined forces. There was a saying in the Tao martial Saint land. Those who had not entered the Saint stage were like chickens and dogs. Once they entered the Saint stage, they would ascend to the heavens. Based on this, one could see the difference between the Saint stage and the non-Saint stage. Naturally, there was a difference in strength between those who were at the peak of the paramount Saint Rudiment stage. According to Fang Gong, he was no match for Bai Li Hong. The Saint weapon in Bai Li Hong's hand was an Earth-rank prominent Saint weapon that was inscribed with 3 3-star Saint inscriptions. It was also the number 1 Saint weapon in the Moon Illumination sect. With this Saint weapon alone, Bai Li Hong's strength was on par with the few vice sect leaders of the Moon Illumination sect. In fact, those few vice sect leaders were already half a step into the Saint stage. They were the ones who had the highest chance of breaking through to the Saint stage in the Moon Illumination sect. All they needed was an opportunity to break through to the Saint stage. The imminent Saint stage was between the peak of the paramount Saint Rudiment stage and the Saint stage. It was stronger than the peak of the paramount Saint Rudiment stage, but weaker than the Saint stage. A Saint weapon inscribed with 3 3-star Saint inscriptions? Duan Lingtian could not help but click his tongue when he heard about Bai Li Hong's Saint weapon. That's too extravagant. Duan Lingtian, even if Elder Bai Li is willing to inscribe the 3-star Saint inscription, the penetration Saint inscription, for you, it'll cost at least 1,000,000 merit points. Fang Gong reminded Duan Lingtian before they arrived at Bai Li Hong's mansion. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded. He had already mentally prepared himself for this. Elder Bai Li, I still have about 1,000,000 merit points with me. If it's not enough, please lend me some. Duan Lingtian looked at Fang Gong and said, I'll return them to you as soon as possible. This is a small matter. Fang Gong smiled faintly. After being notified by the people in Bai Li Hong's mansion, Duan Lingtian and Fang Gong entered Bai Li Hong's mansion and walked into the main hall of the vast mansion. A middle-aged man with stubble on his face was already standing in the main hall. He was frowning as though he was thinking about something. Elder Fang Gong is here. The person who led Duan Lingtian and Fang Gong and said to the middle-aged man, He's Bai Li Hong? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up immediately as he stared at the middle-aged man. All right, you may leave. The middle-aged man's brows relaxed as he waved his hand impatiently. Then, he looked at Fang Gong and asked, Elder Fang Gong, is there anything I can help you with? Elder Bai Li. Chapter 1474. Duan Lingtian? Upon hearing Fang Gong's words, Bai Li Hong's gaze instantly shifted to Duan Lingtian. You're the Duan Lingtian who's only been in the sect for 3 months, but you've already caused a commotion in the outer court district? Duan Lingtian greets Elder Bai Li. At this moment, Duan Lingtian also bowed at Bai Li Hong. It seems like Elder Fang Gong thinks highly of you since he's willing to lead the way for you. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Bai Li Hong asked without beating around the bush. Elder Bai Li, I'm here to ask you to help me inscribe a penetration Saint inscription on my Saint weapon. Duan Lingtian said without beating around the bush. Penetration Saint inscription? Bai Li Hong shook his head when he heard this. If you're here for the penetration Saint inscription, then I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Even I have to put in a lot of effort to inscribe a 3-star Saint inscription. For this reason, I only inscribe a 3-star Saint inscription based on my mood. Based on my mood? Upon hearing this, the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth could not help but twitch. As expected of a capable person. What a character. Elder Bai Li, it seems like you're worried you won't be able to inscribe a 3-star Saint inscription on my Saint weapon. If that's the case, you can rest assured that I've already decided to let you inscribe a Saint inscription on the bowstring of my bow. There's no need to inscribe it on the bow. Duan Lingtian said calmly as he looked at Bai Li Hong. Do you think your provocation will work on me? Bai Li Hong glanced at Duan Lingtian indifferently. A hint of disdain could be heard in his voice. Fang Gong, who was standing at the side, smiled wryly. He felt Duan Lingtian was too impatient. Let alone Elder Bai Li, even Fang Gong could see through Duan Lingtian's provocation. Elder Bai Li, why don't we make a bet? Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he spoke. What bet? Bai Li Hong asked calmly. If you can inscribe a saint rune on my saint artifact bow, even if it's only a 1-star saint rune, I'll consider it my loss. If I lose, I'll give you 1 million merit points. How about that? Duan Ling Tian asked as he looked at Bai Li Hong and announced the terms of the bet. 1 million merit points. It had to be said that Duan Ling Tian's generosity had not only shocked Fong Gong, but even Bai Li Hong was so shocked that he took another look at Duan Ling Tian. Are you sure? Although Duan Ling Tian did not lack merit points since he was the only 3-star Saint Inscription Master in the Moon Illumination sect, he did not have any reason to reject Duan Ling Tian's bet since he was offered 1 million merit points. Even if it was a heaven-grade saint artifact, he was confident that he could inscribe saint runes on it. Therefore, he did not think that he could not inscribe saint runes on Duan Ling Tian's saint weapon. Elder Bai Li, you've agreed? Duan Ling Tian asked with a smile. That's right. Bai Li Hong nodded. Elder Bai Li, I don't think I've mentioned the price you'll have to pay if you lose, right? You've agreed so quickly? Duan Ling Tian asked in surprise. I won't lose, Bai Li Hong said confidently. Bai Li Hong was very confident. He did not dare to speak about other areas, but he was confident in the Saint Inscription Dao. Although you're so confident, Elder Bai Li, I still have to tell you the price you'll have to pay if you lose. If you really can inscribe the Saint Inscription on my Saint Weapon Bow, please inscribe the Penetration Saint Inscription on my Saint Weapon Bow for free. Elder Bai Li, Duan Ling Tian looked at Bai Li Hong and said, No problem. Bai Li Hong agreed immediately. Elder Bai Li, I haven't finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian said again. Duan Ling Tian, don't push your luck, Bai Li Hong said with a frown. The wager of 1 million merit points was almost the same as the value of the Penetration Saint Inscription. Now that he saw Duan Ling Tian wanted to increase the wager, he was unhappy even though he did not think he would lose. If you lose, Elder Bai Li, apart from inscribing the Penetration Saint Inscription for free, you'll also have to guide me in the Saint Inscription Dao for free for a month. Duan Ling Tian ignored Bai Li Hong's words and continued to speak. Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, not only was Bai Li Hong stunned, but even Fong Gong was stunned as well. Duan Ling Tian was interested in saint inscriptions? That's all. Elder Bai Li, are you willing to bet with me? Duan Ling Tian asked with a smile as he looked at Bai Li Hong. Humph. Since you want to give me merit points, I naturally won't refuse. Bai Li Hong snorted. Take out your saint weapon. I'd like to see what kind of saint weapon can make you so confident. I'm not bragging, but I can't even inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven-rank saint weapon. Heaven-rank saint weapon? Duan Ling Tian could not help but laugh inwardly when he heard Bai Li Hong's words. A heaven-grade sacred artifact was nothing in front of the sun-shooting bow. Under the watchful eyes of Bai Li Hong and Fong Gong, Duan Ling Tian took out the sun-shooting bow and revealed it to them. The corner of Fong Gong's mouth twitched when he saw the rusty sun-shooting bow. No matter how he looked at it, this saint weapon did not look like a saint weapon that Elder Bai Li could not inscribe saint inscriptions on. However, Bai Li Hong's attitude was different from Fong Gong's. As the saying went, the layman enjoys the show while the expert appreciates the skill. With just a glance, Bai Li Hong could tell Duan Ling Tian's bow was extraordinary. Put aside the bow, just the bowstring alone was not something a human-rank saint weapon or earth-rank saint weapon would possess. Is this a dragon tendon? Bai Li Hong asked after he took the sun-shooting bow. He stared at the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow and gasped. Dragon tendon? Fong Gong was also shocked by Bai Li Hong's words. Although there were many rumors about dragons in the history of the Dao Martial Saintland. However, in the current era, the dragon was a legendary existence. However, Bai Li Hong said the bowstring of Duan Ling Tian's bow was a dragon tendon. Elder Bai Li, you can recognize it? Duan Ling Tian was shocked. He did not expect Bai Li Hong to recognize the dragon tendon. In fact, this was the first time someone recognized the bowstring of his sun-shooting bow as a dragon tendon since he came to the Moon Illumination sect. In the Dao Martial Saintland, there's no lack of bows that use dragon tendons as bowstrings. The worst bow is a heaven-rank primitive saint weapon. It seems like your saint weapon must be a heaven-rank saint weapon as well. Bai Li Hong muttered to himself. Heaven rank saint weapon. Fong Gan was dumbfounded. He did not expect the saint weapon Duan Ling Tian took out to be a heaven rank saint weapon. In fact, even the Moon Illumination sect did not have a heaven rank saint weapon. Even the 9 sect alliances might not be able to take out a single heaven rank saint artifact. Heaven rank saint weapon? Upon hearing Bai Li Hong's words, Duan Ling Tian remained silent. However, even if it's a heaven rank primitive saint weapon, although it's difficult for me to inscribe a saint inscription on it, it's not impossible. You'll definitely lose this bet. Chapter 1475. Elder Bai Li, don't you think it's too early for you to say this? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. Humph. Bai Li Hong snorted softly and ignored Duan Ling Tian. With a raise of his hand, he took out an extremely small iron pin. It was the inscription pin used by Dao Talisman Masters and Saint Inscription Masters in the Dao Martial Saint Land. The inscription pin had 2 ends. One of the ends looked no different from a brush. The other end was a sharp awl. The inscription pin was so small that it was like a big needle. It emitted waves of cold air. It was obvious the material used was extraordinary. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, inscription pins were divided into different grades. The inscription pin in Bai Li Hong's hand was one of the best in the Dao Martial Saint Land. His inscription pin could even leave a mark on a heaven rank prominent saint weapon. Logically speaking, such an inscription pin should not have appeared in the hands of a 3-star Saint Inscription Master in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Let alone a 3-star Saint Inscription Master, even a 6-star Saint Inscription Master might not have such an inscription pin. The reason Bai Li Hong had such an inscription pin was related to a fortuitous encounter he had in the past. That fortuitous encounter was the inheritance left behind by a 7-star Saint Inscription Master. The inscription pin was also left behind by a 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Due to this fortuitous encounter, he finally became a Saint Inscription Master after many hardships. There's no need to try to inscribe saint inscriptions. As long as my inscription pin can leave a mark on your saint weapon bow, I'll be able to inscribe saint inscriptions on it. You won't deny this, right? Bai Li Hong, who was holding Duan Ling Tian's sun shooting bow in one hand, and the inscription pin in the other, asked as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. Of course, I won't deny it, Duan Ling Tian said matter-of-factly. As long as you can leave a mark on my bow, Elder Bai Li, I'll consider our bet as my loss. I'll definitely admit defeat. Very good. Bai Li Hong nodded in satisfaction. Then, under Duan Ling Tian and Fong Gan's watchful eyes, he inserted his true energy into the inscription pin and pointed the sharp end of the inscription pin at the sun shooting bow's body at lightning speed. The 2 ends of the inscription pin were also very particular. The sharp end was used by Saint Inscription Masters to inscribe saint inscriptions on saint weapons. The other end of the brush was used by Talisman Masters to inscribe talismans on talisman papers. The inscription pin was used by both Saint Inscription Masters and Dao Talisman Masters. Of course, Saint Inscription Masters usually didn't use the other end. Fong Gan watched intently. His heart was filled with curiosity. Who would have the last laugh in this bet? It was not that he did not trust Bai Li Hong. It was Duan Ling Tian's confidence that had shaken him a little. After all, ever since Duan Ling Tian came to the Moon Illumination sect, he had never suffered a loss before. He wasn't sure if it would be an exception this time. Duan Ling Tian watched calmly. Although he did not know that the inscription pin in Bai Li Hong's hand was extraordinary, he was full of confidence in the body of the sun shooting bow, almost blind confidence. What a joke. The body of the sun shooting bow was a special material used to forge immortal supreme treasures. It was definitely not an easy task to leave a mark on it. At the very least, Duan Ling Tian did not think Bai Li Hong would be able to leave a mark on it. Whoosh! The inscription pin fell like a bolt of lightning. The surrounding genuine qi was like a small green snake. At first glance, it looked like streaks of green lightning, constantly rotating around the inscription pin. Clang! Finally, the inscription pin landed on the body of the sun shooting bow and made an ear-piercing sound. At the same time, Bai Li Hong's eyes narrowed. His hand that was holding the inscription pin shook as he tried to leave a mark on the body of the sun-shooting bow. However, although his hand moved, the result left him dumbfounded. He was shocked to find that there was no mark on the body of the bow at all. How's this possible? With the inscription pin in my hand, I can even leave a mark on a heaven-rank prominent saint weapon. After taking a deep breath, Bai Li Hong tried again in disbelief. Unfortunately, the result was the same this time. His inscription pin did not leave a mark on the body of the sun-shooting bow. There's no mark at all. Fang Gong was stunned as well. When he regained his senses, he looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression. Elder Bai Li, you won't go back on your word, right? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. What saint weapon is this? Don't tell me it's one of the legendary super saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking in the Dao Martial Saint Land? Bai Li Hong did not answer Duan Lingtian. Instead, he asked with a solemn expression. No. Duan Lingtian shook his head and said nonchalantly, this is a saint weapon that my master asked his friend to refine for me 20 years ago. It's definitely not one of the 10 great saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking that has been circulating for a long time. When Duan Lingtian spoke, he made up a fabricated master. Your master isn't simple to have a friend who can refine such a saint weapon. Bai Li Hong's expression turned even more solemn when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Fang Gong sighed in relief. Fortunately, he did not ask to take Duan Lingtian as his disciple. Otherwise, he would have been humiliated. No wonder he only acknowledged the city governor of Mount Hill City as his teacher and not his master. As it turns out, he already has a master, and it's obvious that he's an extremely powerful one. Fang Gong thought to himself. It was not difficult for Fang Gong to figure this out. He knew about Bai Li Hong's ability. According to Bai Li Hong, he could even inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven-rank saint weapon. When Bai Li Hong suspected that Duan Lingtian's saint weapon was one of the 10 great saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking earlier, it undoubtedly explained one thing. Duan Lingtian's bow was a saint weapon that was comparable to a super saint weapon. As for the connection between Duan Lingtian and the city governor of Mount Hill City, he had only found out about it recently. I don't know about that. Duan Lingtian shook his head when he saw the solemn expression on Bai Li Hong's face. He muttered to himself gloomily, that old man isn't a good master at all. He always likes to leave me alone, saying that he's training me. I've really boarded a pirate ship. Naturally, Duan Lingtian's words were fabricated. However, it was a different story when it was heard by Bai Li Hong and Fang Gong. If he did not have the sun-shooting bow as a cover, they might not have believed Duan Lingtian's words. However, with the sun-shooting bow that was comparable to a super saint weapon, they could not help but suspect that Duan Lingtian's words might be true. Duan Lingtian, you're lucky to have such a master. It's your good fortune. How can you say that you've boarded a pirate ship? Fang Gong shook his head. I was wondering what kind of background could nurture and produce such a monstrous talent like you. I didn't expect you to have such a mysterious and powerful master behind you. When Fang Gong reached the end of his sentence, he sighed emotionally. Bai Li Hong nodded in agreement when he heard Fang Gong's words. At the same time, he looked at Duan Lingtian and said, Duan Lingtian, I admit that I've lost this bet. Come and take your saint weapon 3 days later. As for learning saint inscriptions, you can start in 3 days. Although he could not inscribe the body of the sun-shooting bow, he was 100% confident that he could inscribe the bowstring. This was because he could not tell what material the body of the sun-shooting bow was made of, but he had long recognized the material of the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow. It was a dragon tendon. Dragon tendon. With the inscription pin in my hand, I'll be able to inscribe the saint inscription even if it's the dragon tendon of a 5-clawed divine dragon. Bai Li Hong was filled with confidence. In the inheritance he obtained from the 7-star saint inscription master, not only did it contain the saint inscription art, but it also contained many secrets such as the secrets of the dragons. He also knew that the 5-clawed divine dragon was the most powerful existence among the dragons in the Dao Martial Saint Land. According to the message left behind by the 7-star saint inscription master, the inscription pin he left behind could even inscribe saint inscriptions on the toughest part of a 5-clawed divine dragon's dragon scales, let alone the dragon tendon. However, Bai Li Hong did not know that the dragon tendon on the bow in his hand was the dragon tendon of a five-clawed divine dragon. Thank you, Elder Bai Li. A smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face when he heard Bai Li Hong's promise. He quickly thanked him. After thanking him, Duan Lingtian looked at Bai Li Hong and Fang Gong before he said solemnly, "Also, please don't tell anyone about this bow of mine, Elder Bai Li and Elder Fang Gong. I don't want to become a target for everyone." One could imagine that if others found out that his son's shooting bow was comparable to a super sacred artifact, there would be countless people who would want to snatch his son's shooting bow. "I'm not that bored," Bai Li Hong said indifferently. "I'm not that bored." Naturally, there was something he did not say. Even if he was so bored, he did not dare to take the risk because it was very likely that he would offend the master behind Duan Lingtian. Although Bai Li Hong could not confirm the existence of Duan Lingtian's master, he did not dare to take the risk. "Don't worry." Fang Gong's reply was even more straightforward. Since Bai Li Hong was going to help Duan Lingtian inscribe the 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, on the bowstring of the sun's shooting bow, Duan Lingtian and Fang Gong did not stay to disturb him. After saying their goodbyes, they left Bai Li Hong's mansion together. After they left, Fang Gong spoke to Duan Lingtian along the way. He was curious about Duan Lingtian's master. Duan Lingtian responded to his questions one by one. The reason he made up a master that did not exist was just to be safe. From the moment he was prepared to show how extraordinary the sun's shooting bow was, he already had a plan. He would fabricate a master so that Bai Li Hong and Fang Gong would be wary of him and would not dare to snatch the sun's shooting bow from him. Although he could see that Bai Li Hong and Fang Gong were not cunning people, he had to be cautious. As the saying went, one could know a person's face but not his heart. As a person who had lived 2 lives, he was more cautious than ordinary people. "Elder Fang Gong, when I went to look for you earlier, the senior in your mansion seemed to address you as young master. He must have been following you for a long time, right?" Chapter 1476. "Yes, he's been with me for a long time." Fang Gong nodded and said in a nostalgic tone, "More than 100 years ago, when I was still young, I was the young master of the prominent clan in the Moon Illumination sect's territory. He, on the other hand, was a martial arts student who accompanied me to train. Later on, he entered the Moon Illumination sect with me until today." Fang Gong's face was gentle when he reached the end of his sentence. Duan Lingtian nodded. It was similar to what he had expected. After rejecting Fang Gong's invitation, Duan Lingtian left the inner court and returned to the outer court. As soon as Duan Lingtian returned to his independent courtyard, he saw a familiar figure standing outside his courtyard. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he saw the figure. He greeted him with a smile. "Xionghu, senior brother Duan." Xionghu turned around when he heard Duan Lingtian's greeting. His face was also filled with excitement. "I didn't expect so many things to happen while I was in closed-door cultivation. Duan Lingtian, you're too powerful. This time, our Mount Hill city can finally hold our heads up high." It was apparent that Xionghu had heard about Duan Lingtian's recent achievements after he came out of closed-door cultivation, killing Feng Fan, defeating an inner court disciple, and defeating He Zhong. When he first heard about it, he was stunned and could not react in time. Duan Lingtian appeared calm in the face of Xionghu's excitement. He merely smiled faintly. "Xionghu, you happened to be in closed-door cultivation when I went to look for you the last time. Since you've come out of closed-door cultivation, I should transfer the merit points that teacher gave you to you." Duan Lingtian lifted his hand and took out his crystal card. "Senior brother, you should keep those merit points for yourself." Xionghu chuckled. "Are you sure you want to keep them for me? Are you sure you don't want to borrow a human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactic?" Duan Lingtian looked deeply at Xionghu, causing him to feel a little awkward. He really did not think so much before this. He only thought that those merit points could be put to greater use in Duan Lingtian's hands. "That's enough. You're a man. Why are you wasting time?" Duan Lingtian said impatiently. Only then did Xionghu take out his crystal card. However, when he saw the merit points that Duan Lingtian had transferred to him, he cried out, "Senior brother Duan, this isn't right. I remember that Master gave me 20,000 merit points. Why did you transfer 250,000 merit points to me?" What can you do with 20,000 merit points? With these 250,000 merit points, other than being able to borrow a human rank high-grade Saint-grade martial technique, you can also buy an Earth-rank Saint weapon inscribed with 2-star Saint inscriptions. Duan Lingtian said, "That's all I can help you with. As for the merit points you need to borrow human rank prominent Saint-grade martial tactics, you'll have to earn them yourself." Senior brother Duan. Xiong, whose eyes turned red when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Naturally, he knew that Duan Lingtian was trying to help him. Even his master, the city governor of Mound Hill City, might not have an Earth-rank Saint weapon inscribed with 2-star Saint inscriptions. All right, hurry up and go to the Merit Pavilion. After Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he returned to his small courtyard without waiting for Xionghu's response. He had thought it through carefully before giving Xionghu so many merit points. Currently, he had completely offended the inner court elder, Lu Huan, in the Moon Illumination sect. If Lu Huan thought that he was not easy to deal with, he would definitely shift his target to Xionghu and Lingyun. If Xionghu and Lingyun did not have the ability to protect themselves, they would definitely suffer. Although Lu Huan would never let the people from Mound Hill City go, he was the one who had triggered the current conflict. Therefore, he did not want Xionghu and Lingyun to suffer because of him. After 3 days, Duan Lingtian finally finished inscribing the Saint inscription on the sun-shooting bow. During these 3 days, Duan Lingtian entered the second level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and cultivated for 9 days before coming out. At this time, 3 days had passed in the outside world. This time, Duan Lingtian went to Bai Li Hong's mansion alone. "Your Saint weapon." Bai Li Hong passed the sun-shooting bow to Duan Lingtian. After Duan Lingtian received it on the spot, he was ready to test it out in the front courtyard of Bai Li Hong's mansion. Coincidentally, there was a huge rock in the front courtyard. Moreover, it was not an ordinary rock. With your strength, the Saint weapon in your hand, and the penetration Saint inscription, it'll be a little difficult for you to penetrate this huge rock, Bai Li Hong told Duan Lingtian. This huge rock was a unique rock in the Dao Martial Saint land. The metal material extracted from it could even be used to refine Saint weapons. Naturally, it could only be used to refine human-rank Saint weapons. However, even with that being the case, it was not difficult to pierce through such a large rock. Upon hearing Bai Li Hong's words, Duan Lingtian did not say anything. He raised his hand and raised the sun-shooting bow. True energy shot out from his right hand and eventually formed an arrow. He knocked the arrow on the bowstring and pulled the bowstring open. This is the penetration Saint inscription? As he pulled the bowstring open, Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on the bowstring. He saw the inconspicuous inscription on the bowstring. It was obvious it was the 3-star Saint inscription, the penetration Saint inscription that Bai Li Hong had inscribed on it. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian directly inserted his true energy into it and activated it. In an instant, the penetration Saint inscription was activated. At the same time, Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the change in the true energy arrow that was knocked on the bowstring. It was a very clear change. It was as though the arrow had the ability to pierce through everything at this moment. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian pulled the bowstring open with all his might. Squeak, squeak. In the end, the bowstring emitted a soft sound that was particularly ear-piercing. Bai Li Hong stood at the side and watched intently. He also wanted to see how powerful this martial Dao genius who was famous in the outer court would be with the help of a strong bow that was inscribed with the penetration Saint inscription. Duan Lingtian, who had knocked the arrow on the bow, began to pull his back as well. It was as though he had transformed into a strong bow as well. All of a sudden, the strong bow shook violently. In the next moment, the arrow on the bowstring in his hand shook and transformed into a streak of light that shot through the air. With a puff sound, it penetrated the huge rock in front of him, leaving a bottomless hole on it. Puff. Before Bai Li Hong could react, he heard another soft sound. After the Jinshi arrow pierced through the boulder, the Jinshi arrow continued to pierce through the thick wall and continued to whistle through the air. At this moment, a shriek suddenly resonated from outside, causing Duan Lingtian to be stunned. Someone was shot by me? At this moment, Duan Lingtian had a strange expression on his face. Who would be so unlucky? Duan Lingtian rushed to the entrance of Bai Li Hong's mansion immediately. When he looked outside the wall, he happened to see an inner court disciple limping away without any hesitation. It was as though he had no intention of entering Bai Li Hong's mansion at all. It seems like as a 3-star Saint Inscription Master, Elder Bai Li's prestige in the Moon Illumination sect is quite high. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. It was not difficult for him to understand this. Even the sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect and the few other Saint stage powerhouses in the Moon Illumination sect had to treat a 3-star Saint Inscription Master with respect, let alone the people below. Since that inner court disciple was able to appear here, he must be a disciple of an inner court elder. As a disciple of an inner court elder, it was only natural that he knew Bai Li Hong was not someone to be trifled with. When Duan Lingtian returned to the front courtyard of Bai Li Hong's mansion, he saw Bai Li Hong looking at him as though he was looking at a monster. Elder Bai Li, you're indeed a 3-star Saint Inscription Master. The 3-star Saint Inscription, the Penetration Saint Inscription, is just too powerful. Duan Lingtian could not help but exclaim when he recalled the power of the arrow when it left his hand. Not only did the arrow penetrate the huge rock, but it even penetrated the thick wall and injured an inner court disciple who was passing by. Are you really a martial cultivator at the perfection mortal shedding stage? However, Bai Li Hong ignored Duan Lingtian. Instead, he stared at Duan Lingtian and asked, "What? Elder Bai Li, are you trying to probe me with your spiritual secret tactic?" Duan Lingtian shook his head. However, what he did not expect was that as soon as he finished speaking, Bai Li Hong's spiritual energy pressed down on him and enveloped him in the blink of an eye. At this moment, he even felt as though he was standing in front of others completely naked. At this moment, it seemed like he no longer had any secrets. Duan Lingtian was rendered speechless. He did not expect Bai Li Hong to probe him with his spiritual secret tactic. Moreover, he could not lose his temper. After all, he was the one who suggested it. It was equivalent to shooting himself in the foot. He's really on the perfection mortal shedding stage. What a little monster. Bai Li Hong muttered to himself after inhaling a breath of cold air. At this moment, he was even more certain of one thing in his heart, and that was it was very likely that the Master Duan Lingtian had fabricated really existed. If it was not for the mysterious and powerful master behind him, how could Duan Lingtian be so monstrous? Bai Li Hong's thoughts were simple and straightforward. With your current ability, you can be ranked at the top even in the Earth ranking. By the time you break through to the paramount mortal shedding stage, I'm afraid the first place on the Earth ranking will have to give way to someone better. Bai Li Hong looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated gaze as he said this. Elder Bai Li, are you that confident in me? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. I'm confident in the saint inscriptions that I've inscribed. Bai Li Hong snorted. Naturally, he would not admit that. Every time he recalled how he had given away a 3-star saint inscription for free, his heart felt like it was bleeding. The materials for a 3-star saint inscription alone would be worth at least 200,000 to 300,000 merit points in the Moon Illumination sect. If Duan Lingtian could hear Bai Li Hong's thoughts, he would definitely have cursed him secretly. A saint inscription that could be inscribed with 200,000 to 300,000 merit points was sold at a sky-high price of millions of merit points. Even a crow was not that greedy. Elder Bai Li, can I learn saint inscriptions from you from today onward? Duan Lingtian asked with a gleam in his eyes. Since I've promised you, of course, I won't regret it. However, the saint inscription Tao isn't something that can be learned easily. It also depends on your innate talent. You must be mentally prepared for that. Chapter 1477. Was the saint inscription Tao not something that could be learned just because one wanted to? Did it have to depend on one's innate talent? Did it have to be mentally prepared? Upon hearing Bai Li Hong's words, Duan Lingtian chuckled inwardly. He had inherited Reincarnation Emperor Wu's lifetime of Inscription Tao. Since Inscription Tao and Saint Inscription Tao were different, he did not need to start from scratch to learn Saint Inscription Tao. All he needed to do was to grasp the similarities between Saint Inscription Tao and Saint Inscription Tao. As long as he could build a bridge between Saint Inscription Tao and Saint Inscription Tao, he believed he would become an outstanding Saint Inscription master. In the following month, Duan Lingtian stayed in Bai Li Hong's mansion and learned the Saint Inscription Tao from him. In the beginning, Bai Li Hong did not think highly of Duan Lingtian. After all, Duan Lingtian's innate talent in the martial Tao was already heaven-defying. In his opinion, God was fair. When he gave Duan Lingtian a heaven-defying innate talent in the martial Tao, he would not give Duan Lingtian an innate talent in the Saint Inscription Tao. However, reality gave him a resounding slap. He even thought God was playing a joke on him. How could there be such a person in this world who was so blessed by God? In just a month, Duan Lingtian could already inscribe a 1-star Saint Inscription. If it was not for Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy being too weak, Bai Li Hong did not doubt Duan Lingtian would be able to inscribe a 2-star Saint Inscription. In this 1 month, Duan Lingtian had given him too many surprises. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian was confused. Then, Duan Lingtian was able to draw inferences from one instance. Occasionally, Duan Lingtian would say something that would make him ponder for a long time. Sometimes, Duan Lingtian gave him a feeling that he was not a beginner in the Saint Inscription Tao. Instead, he felt more like an experienced person. It was an unbelievable feeling, but it was true. Inscriptions, saint runes. They are the same in essence. Duan Lingtian had already seen the bridge that connected inscriptions and saint inscriptions when he had just learned 10 heavenly saint inscriptions from Bai Li Hong. After 20 days, he had already walked on the bridge and comprehended it. After a few more days, he had completely grasped the similarities between inscriptions and saint inscriptions. He could also convert some of the inscriptions in Emperor Wu's memory into saint inscriptions. The inscriptions in Emperor Wu's memory were all-encompassing. There were so many types that it would take more than a day and a night to list them all. For example, the 2-star saint inscriptions, the 1,000-mass saint inscription, the Gale saint inscription, and the 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, that he had come into contact with before could be transformed and inscribed through the inscriptions in the rebirth martial emperor's memory. Naturally, the material required for the inscription must be similar to the material used by the Tao Martial Saint Land's Saint Inscription Masters. It must be refined into an ink-like liquid. The liquid was driven by the inscription pen to inscribe saint inscriptions. With his current spiritual energy, the limit was to inscribe a 1-star saint inscription. If he wanted to inscribe a 2-star saint inscription, he would have to break through to the saint rudiment stage first. Only by breaking through to the saint rudiment stage would his spiritual energy be able to transform further and reach the level where he could inscribe 2-star saint inscriptions. After this 1 month of learning, I can now see inscriptions and saint inscriptions as one. With the help of Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memory, as long as my spiritual energy reaches a certain level, I'll be able to inscribe the corresponding saint inscription. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. This situation was exactly the same as when he was on Cloud Continent. When he was on Cloud Continent, as long as his spiritual energy reached a certain level, he would be able to inscribe the corresponding inscription. Elder Bai Li, I'll have to trouble you for this 1 month. A month had passed, and it was time to leave. Duan Lingtian looked at Bai Li Hong and thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Duan Lingtian, your innate talent in the Saint Inscription Tao surpasses mine. Bai Li Hong looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated gaze. Then, as though he had made up his mind, he clenched his teeth and said to Duan Lingtian, I'd like to accept you as my disciple on behalf of my teacher. Are you willing? Elder Bai Li, why you have a teacher? Duan Lingtian was a little surprised. Otherwise, where do you think I learned the Saint Inscription Tao from? Bai Li Hong shook his head and said solemnly, Duan Lingtian, my teacher is a 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Even the inscription pen in my hand was given to me by him. 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Duan Lingtian was shocked by Bai Li Hong's words. Although he had guessed Bai Li Hong's teacher must be a 4-star Saint Inscription Master or above, he did not expect Bai Li Hong's teacher to be a 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Do you know why I was so confident about our bet a month ago? Bai Li Hong asked. Weren't you confident that you could inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven-ranked saint weapon? Duan Lingtian asked. Then do you know why I was so confident that I could inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven-ranked saint weapon? Bai Li Hong asked again. It should be the inscription pin. Duan Lingtian pondered for a moment before he replied. The material used to forge a heaven-rank saint weapon was extremely hard. If the inscription pin was too inferior, it would not be able to leave a mark on it. That's right, it's the inscription pin. Bai Li Hong nodded. At the same time, his eyes lit up as he said, generally speaking, it's already considered good for a 3-star saint inscription master to have a 4-star inscription pin. However, a 4-star inscription pin can only inscribe saint inscriptions on an earth-rank primitive saint weapon at most. A 4-star inscription pin can only inscribe saint inscriptions on an earth-rank primitive saint weapon at most? There's such a requirement? Duan Lingtian was surprised. Of course. Bai Li Hong nodded. Inscription pins are divided into different grades. The worst is a 1-star inscription pin while the best is a 9-star inscription pin. Of course, this is just a common saying in the Dao Martial Saint land. According to my teacher, there's an inscription pin that's of a higher grade than a 9-star inscription pin in the Dao Martial Saint land. Duan Lingtian finally understood. Although he had already connected saint inscriptions and inscriptions together and mastered the method of transforming inscriptions into saint inscriptions, he did not know much about the inscription pins in the Dao Martial Saint land. Now that he heard Bai Li Hong's words, he finally knew there were so many requirements to an inscription pin. A 1-star inscription pin corresponds to human rank inferior saint artifacts, and it can inscribe saint inscriptions on them at most. A 2-star inscription pin corresponds to human rank medial saint artifacts, and it can inscribe saint inscriptions on them at most. A 3-star inscription pin corresponds to a human rank primitive saint weapon. A 4-star inscription pin corresponds to an earth rank primitive saint weapon, and so on. A 9-star inscription pin corresponds to a heaven rank primitive saint weapon. Duan Lingtian gained a new understanding of the inscription pin after Bai Li Hong finished speaking in one breath. Then, Elder Bai Li, the inscription pin in your hand is a 7-star inscription pin or above? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise. A month ago, Bai Li Hong had said he could inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven rank saint weapon. Now that he had a deeper understanding of the inscription pin, it was not difficult for him to figure this out. That's right. Bai Li Hong nodded. At the same time, he took out his inscription pin and muttered, "This is an inscription pin that my teacher whom I've never met gave me. It's a 9-star inscription pin. With it, I can even inscribe saint inscriptions on a heaven rank primitive saint weapon. Now, you should know why I was so confident a month ago, right?" When Bai Li Hong reached this part of his sentence, he looked at Duan Lingtian. At the same time, he recalled the bet from a month ago. He could not help but sigh. However, I didn't expect the saint weapon in your hand to be a super saint weapon that's above a heaven rank primitive saint weapon. Super saint weapon was how Bai Li Hong described Duan Lingtian's sun-shooting bow. Only Duan Lingtian knew the sun-shooting bow in his hand was not a super saint weapon. It was a damaged celestial supreme treasure. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. After all, it was a celestial supreme treasure. Although it was damaged, its hardness was not something a mere super saint weapon could compare to. A 9-star inscription pin. When Bai Li Hong said his inscription pin was a 9-star inscription pin, Duan Lingtian was so shocked that he did not hear what Bai Li Hong said after that. A 9-star inscription pin was the best inscription pin in the Dao Martial Saint land. Although Duan Lingtian had guessed the inscription pin in Bai Li Hong's hand was at least a 7-star inscription pin, he thought it was just a 7-star inscription pin. He did not expect Bai Li Hong's inscription pin to be a 9-star inscription pin. Elder Bai Li, didn't you say your teacher was only a 7-star saint inscription master? How did he get a 9-star inscription pin? Duan Lingtian asked as he looked at Bai Li Hong in shock. Well, it's not mentioned in the jade token my teacher left behind. That's why I don't know. Bai Li Hong shook his head. You didn't ask him? Duan Lingtian was stunned. Ask him? Bai Li Hong was stunned as well. Then, he smiled wryly. Duan Lingtian, I've already said that I've never met my teacher. The inheritance I obtained is a spatial ring my teacher left behind. Apart from some materials for inscribing saint inscriptions, there are only 2 jade tokens and this 9-star inscription pin in my hand in the spatial ring. Even I don't know which era my teacher was from in the Dao Martial Saint land. When Bai Li Hong reached the end of his sentence, he could not help but sigh. I see. Duan Ling Tian finally understood. As it turned out, the saint inscription inheritance that Bai Li Hong obtained came from the spatial ring left behind by a 7-star saint inscription master. It was not passed down by the 7-star saint inscription master himself. Since that senior isn't here, why did you say you want to accept me as your disciple on behalf of your teacher, Elder Bai Li? Duan Ling Tian asked in confusion. In the jade token my teacher left behind, he told me that if my innate talent in saint inscriptions is ordinary and I meet someone who's much more talented than me, I must accept him as my disciple and inherit his legacy, the strange inscription art. When Bai Li Hong reached the end of his sentence, his face was solemn. Strange inscription art? Duan Ling Tian was surprised. What's that? Does it have anything to do with saint inscriptions? According to my teacher, the strange inscription art is an alternative inscription technique of the saint inscription art. It focuses on using the cheapest materials to inscribe saint inscriptions that are similar to the ones inscribed by the orthodox inscription technique. The saint inscriptions are the same, but the materials used are very different. In some cases, the difference is a few times more exaggerated. Chapter 1478. It's a pity my talent is limited, and I didn't manage to learn the strange inscription art from the legacy my teacher left behind. If it wasn't for the legacy my teacher left behind, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. Bai Li Hong sighed with a gloomy expression on his face when he reached the end of his sentence. Bai Li Hong had always been worried about not being able to learn the strange inscription art from his teacher whom he had never met before. Throughout the years, he had met some saint inscription masters who were quite talented in saint inscriptions. However, those saint inscription masters could not learn the strange inscription art. The strange inscription art was all about the word strange. For a saint inscription with the same effect, the strange inscription art required less than half of the materials required for an orthodox saint inscription art. The reason the strange inscription art was so miraculous was because it had a high requirement on one's spiritual energy. Naturally, the high requirement on one's spiritual energy did not mean the level of one's spiritual energy was high. Instead, it meant the usage of one's spiritual energy was high. Only those who could utilize their spiritual energy to an extraordinary degree would be able to master the strange inscription art. Some people were born with strong spiritual energy. Their spiritual energy would follow their thoughts like a shadow. In other words, they could move their soul at will. Unfortunately, Bai Li Hong was not such a person. Due to this reason, he was destined to never learn the strange inscription art. This had always been a knot in Bai Li Hong's heart. After he obtained the 7-star Saint Inscription Master's legacy, he knew how much the 7-star Saint Inscription Master wanted to find a successor for the strange inscription art. For this reason, he had always hoped to find a qualified successor for the 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Although he had never met the 7-star Saint Inscription Master before, he had always treated the 7-star Saint Inscription Master as his teacher. After all, without the 7-star Saint Inscription Master, he would not have achieved what he had today. All these years, he had relied on the Saint Inscription art to gather a large amount of cultivation resources to achieve what he had today. Otherwise, with his innate talent, he would not have achieved what he had today. He was a person who knew how to repay kindness. He had always been looking for an opportunity to repay his debt of gratitude. And now, he realized that his chance to repay the favor had come. Duan Ling Tian was the person he had been looking for, the person who could inherit his teacher's strange inscription art. During this period of time, when Duan Ling Tian was inscribing the saint runes, he could clearly sense that Duan Ling Tian's use of mind power had reached the acme of perfection, leaving him in the dust. Ordinary saint inscription masters had to be at least at the saint rudiment stage. On the other hand, Duan Ling Tian was able to inscribe sacred runes when he was in the immortal realm. Strange pattern art. Duan Ling Tian was quite curious about the strange inscription technique from Bai Li Hong. The orthodox saint inscription art in the Dao martial saint land was undoubtedly similar to the inscription art on Cloud Continent. However, the strange inscription art was quite different from the inscription art on Cloud Continent. This piqued his curiosity. This jade token contains the records of the strange inscription art. I think you're the most suitable person for him. With a raise of his hand, Bai Li Hong took out a jade token and passed it to Duan Lingtian solemnly. At the same time, he said solemnly, Duan Lingtian, I know you already have a teacher. However, if you really inherit the strange inscription art, I hope you can treat my teacher as your teacher as well. That's only right. Duan Lingtian did not reject the jade token that Bai Li Hong passed to him. He was also curious about the strange inscription art. Now that he had the chance to learn it, he would not miss it. Since he had obtained the inheritance from the 7-star Saint Inscription Master, it was only natural for him to acknowledge him as his teacher. Moreover, he did not know which era the 7-star Saint Inscription Master was from. He might not even be alive now. For this reason, Duan Lingtian did not even need to think about it. Only a fool would reject the benefits that were sent to him. From today onward, you're my junior brother, Bai Li Hong said with a smile. Bai Li Hong smiled and said, in the future, don't call me Elder Bai Li. Just call me senior brother. Senior brother. Duan Lingtian was not a person who would stick to trifles. He immediately changed his way of addressing Bai Li Hong. A bright smile appeared on Bai Li Hong's face when he heard how Duan Lingtian addressed him. It doesn't matter if my teacher is still alive or not. I'm sure he'll be very happy if he knows I've found such an outstanding disciple like you for him. Senior brother, don't be in such a hurry to praise me. I'm not even sure if I'll be able to cultivate the strange inscription art. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. With your ability to use spiritual energy, if you can't cultivate the strange inscription art, I'm afraid nobody in the world can cultivate it. Bai Li Hong was very confident in Duan Lingtian. Just like that, Duan Lingtian had already acknowledged an inner court elder as his senior brother before he even entered the Moon Illumination sect's inner court. Moreover, this inner court elder was not an ordinary inner court elder. As a 3-star Saint Inscription Master, Bai Li Hong's position in the Moon Illumination sect was not only on par with the few vice sect leaders, but it was even slightly above them. Even the few saint stage powerhouses, including the sect leader, were very polite to him. Junior brother, I heard you're from Mount Hill City? Bai Li Hong asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. The fact that he was from Mount Hill City was no secret in the Moon Illumination sect. As for Lu Huan, I'll personally knock some sense into him later. I'll let him know that my junior brother isn't someone he can touch as he pleases. Bai Li Hong's eyes gleamed. His tone was domineering. It was apparent he knew about the conflict between the people from Mount Hill City and Lu Huan. Naturally, Duan Lingtian would not reject Bai Li Hong's good intentions. However, he knew very well that even if Lu Huan was wary of his senior brother, he would only restrain himself on the surface. However, Lu Huan would still see him as a thorn in his side. If he did not get rid of him, Lu Huan would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. That's good as well. At the very least, Lu Huan will restrain himself on the surface. This is a good thing for Xiong Hu and Ling Yun. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as his heart jolted. Senior brother, a month's time is up. It's time for me to return. Duan Lingtian bade farewell to Bai Li Hong. Junior brother, leave your bow behind. I'll inscribe 2 more 3-star saint inscriptions for you. My current limit is to inscribe 3 3-star saint inscriptions on a saint weapon at most. More than that is beyond my ability. Bai Li Hong told Duan Lingtian. Now that Duan Lingtian was his junior brother, it was only natural that he would help Duan Lingtian as much as he could. He was reluctant to inscribe a 3-star saint inscription for Duan Lingtian previously. However, he was more than willing to inscribe more 3-star saint inscriptions for Duan Lingtian now. Thank you, senior brother. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up immediately as he thanked Bai Li Hong. If the sun shooting bow had 3 3-star saint inscriptions, it would undoubtedly be more powerful. It would be of great help to him. Although his attainment in the Saint Inscription Dao was not inferior to Bai Li Hong after he had mastered both Saint Inscriptions and Saint Inscriptions. However, due to his weak spiritual energy, he could only inscribe 1-star Saint Inscriptions. According to Bai Li Hong, he would have to break through to the Perfection Saint Rudiment stage before he could inscribe 3-star Saint Inscriptions. Also, you can stay in my mansion from now on, Bai Li Hong said to Bai Li Hong. Bai Li Hong said to Duan Lingtian, Senior brother has arranged a quiet courtyard for you. It's definitely better than the courtyard in the outer court. Senior brother, I appreciate your kindness. However, I'd like to stay in the outer court for the time being. It won't be too late for me to stay in your courtyard when I enter the inner court. Duan Lingtian smiled. You said it yourself. You must stay at my place when you enter the inner court, Bai Li Hong said seriously.
Yes.
Of course. Duan Lingtian hurriedly nodded in response. After handing the sun shooting bow to Bai Li Hong, Duan Lingtian left. He was in a hurry to go back and study the strange inscription art. If he could master the strange inscription art, the efficiency of him earning saint stones in the future would be 2 times higher than an ordinary saint inscription master. After all, a saint inscription master who specialized in the strange inscription art would need less than half of the materials compared to an ordinary saint inscription master to inscribe the same saint inscription master. Naturally, Duan Lingtian could faintly sense that the profundity of the strange inscription art did not stop there. However, since he did not cultivate the strange inscription art, his understanding of the strange inscription art was limited to the amount of materials needed to inscribe the saint inscription. Naturally, this was just his intuition. He would have to find out if this was the case. As soon as Duan Lingtian left the inner court, a piece of news spread in the inner court. The inner court elder, Bai Li Hong, the only 3-star saint inscription master in the Moon Illumination sect, announced that he would take Duan Lingtian, an outer court disciple, as his disciple on behalf of his master. From today onward, Duan Lingtian would be Bai Li Hong's junior brother. The news spread like a hurricane in the inner court and shook the entire inner court. It was as though a violent earthquake had happened in the inner court. Elder Bai Li has taken an outer court disciple as his junior brother? Is this a joke? Who's that outer court disciple? Is he so awesome? He's taken as Elder Bai Li's junior brother? The group of inner court disciples who did not pay much attention to what happened in the outer court were stunned by the news. Really? You don't know who that Duan Lingtian is? That Duan Lingtian is famous in the sect recently, but you don't know him? Those inner court disciples who had long heard of Duan Lingtian began to tell the disciples who had never heard of Duan Lingtian before about Duan Lingtian's past deeds. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's name began to spread in the inner court. These inner court disciples who had heard of Duan Lingtian were also shocked by the news that Duan Lingtian had become Elder Bai Li's junior brother. Some of them even looked into it and found out that it was true. Duan Lingtian had really become Elder Bai Li's junior brother. When the news shocked the entire inner court, Lu Huan, naturally, received the news as well. When he heard the news, he was so angry that he crushed the teacup in his hand into powder. Who's that Duan Lingtian? How did that old man, Bai Li Hong, take him as his junior brother? Damn it! Damn it! Chapter 1479. Duan Lingtian has been taken in as a disciple by Elder Bai Li on behalf of his master, and he's now Elder Bai Li's junior brother? Outside the courtyard where Lu Huan lived, Su Qi, who had planned to look for Lu Huan, stopped in his tracks when he heard Lu Huan's roar. A complicated expression flashed across his eyes. However, a faintly discernible smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. He did not look for Lu Huan anymore. Instead, he turned around and left. He knew Lu Huan's temper very well. He would be asking for trouble if he looked for Lu Huan at this time. In the next few days, the news that spread in the inner court had also spread to the outer court, shocking everyone in the outer court. Not many people would be surprised if some outstanding outer court disciple was secretly taken in as a direct disciple by an inner court elder. This was not a rare occurrence in the history of the Moon Illumination sect. However, this was the first time in the history of the Moon Illumination sect that an outer court disciple was taken in as a junior brother by an inner court elder. Most importantly, the inner court elder who took in the outer court disciple as his junior brother was not an ordinary inner court elder. Elder Bai Li has taken in senior brother Duan Lingtian as his disciple on behalf of his master, and he's taking senior brother Duan Lingtian as his junior brother? Is this for real? The news came from the inner court, and it was confirmed by the people in Elder Bai Li's mansion. This news can't be fake. Isn't senior brother Duan Lingtian a little too amazing? For other outer sect disciples to be able to become inner sect elders' disciples is already envied by others. Yet, he directly became an inner sect elder's junior brother. That's an existence on par with inner sect elders. Most importantly, that inner court elder is Elder Bai Li. Who doesn't know that Elder Bai Li is the only 3-star saint inscription master in our Moon Illumination sect? Among the 9 great sects in the 9 sect alliances, only our Moon Illumination sect and another sect have a 3-star saint inscription master each. The other 7 sects don't have one. They'll have to come to our Moon Illumination sect if they want a 3-star saint inscription master. Even the sect leader doesn't dare to neglect Elder Bai Li. After all, if Elder Bai Li is unhappy and leaves our Moon Illumination sect, it'll definitely be a great loss to our sect. As the news spread, the entire outer sect area was shaken. All the outer sect elders, deacons, and outer sect disciples who were not in closed-door training knew about the news immediately. In a remote mansion located at a corner of the outer court district, the outer court's grand elder, Dongfang Quan, almost spat out the mouthful of tea he had just sipped when he heard the news. Duan Lingtian has been acknowledged by Elder Bailey as his junior brother? After Dongfang Quan swallowed the tea in his mouth, he sucked in a breath of cold air, and his face was filled with shock. As the Grand Elder of the Outer Court, Dongfang Quan's position in the Moon Illumination sect was in no way inferior to the Inner Court Elders. In fact, his position even surpassed ordinary Inner Court Elders. However, before Elder Bailey Hong, even though he did not have to be extremely respectful, he still had to maintain a courteous attitude. He did not dare to be negligent or overstep his boundaries. All of this was not only because Elder Bailey was powerful, but it was more because he was a 3-star saint inscription master. In the Moon Illumination sect, apart from the few saint stage powerhouses including the sect leader, the person he feared the most was Elder Bailey. However, now that he found out Elder Bailey had acknowledged Duan Lingtian as his junior brother, Elder Bailey is definitely not an impulsive person. Why would he acknowledge Duan Lingtian as his junior brother? Dongfang Quan could not figure it out even after thinking about it for a long time. In the end, he could only make wild guesses. Maybe it's because Duan Lingtian has revealed his true identity in front of him, so he acknowledged Duan Lingtian as his junior brother just to cover it up and protect Duan Lingtian? Other than that, he really could not think of any other reason. He did not believe that Duan Lingtian had known Bailey Hong for a long time. If Duan Lingtian had such a relationship with Bailey Hong, why would he need to spend 4th grade and 5th grade Saint Stones to hire him as a witness when he had a death duel with Feng Fan? Due to this reason, he was certain Duan Lingtian and Bailey Hong had only gotten in touch recently. While Dongfang Quan was shocked by the news of Bailey Hong acknowledging Duan Lingtian as his junior brother, Huang Chung, who was in an independent mansion in the outer court, had also received the news. Smack! The moment Huang Chung heard the news, his expression was extremely grave. He slapped his palm out, and the sound of wind and thunder reverberated in the air. The stone table in front of him was instantly crushed into dust. Is this news true? Huang Chung asked in a deep voice as he looked at the outer court disciple who told him the news. It's true. I heard that even the people in Elder Bailey's mansion admitted it. The outer court disciple nodded. All right, you can leave now. Huang Chung took a deep breath and waved his hand impatiently. After the outer court disciple who told him the news left, Huang Cheng's expression darkened as he growled in a low voice. Don't tell me that the matter between me and Duan Lingtian is going to end just like that? My 300,000 merit points are going to be wasted just like that? He was unwilling to accept this. Finally, Huang Chung took a deep breath and said with a gloomy expression, Duan Lingtian, you have Elder Bailey as your backer now. It's true that I can't do anything to you in the sect. However, if you dare to leave the sect, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. It was obvious that Huang Chung did not choose to compromise in the end. At the same time, the outer court deacon, Deng Wei, had also received the news. His expression was extremely grave. What did Duan Lingtian do to deserve Elder Bailey's favor and even become Elder Bailey's junior brother? He suddenly felt that his chance of revenge seemed to have become extremely slim. Forget it. Forget it. The enmity between us was because of you in the beginning. Now that he has such a backer, there's no need for me to continue to be his enemy. Otherwise, if Elder Bailey finds out about this, I'll definitely die. Unlike Huang Chung, Deng Wei chose to compromise. I must let Yuer know about this. I must let him forget about the enmity between him and Duan Lingtian. Deng Wei did what he wanted to do. He immediately wrote a letter and asked someone to send it to his clan, the Deng clan. He did not want Deng Yu to not forget about the enmity between him and Duan Lingtian and bring disaster to the Deng clan. Elder Bai Li, the only 3-star saint inscription master in the Moon Illumination sect? In an independent courtyard in the outer court area, Yi Man's eyes were scarlet red, and his expression was extremely gloomy. Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian, could it be that you were really born to restrain me, Yi Man? I'm unwilling to accept this. I'm unwilling to accept this. Yi Man was almost roaring when he reached the end of his sentence. At this moment, he had a feeling that since he was born, why was there a need for him to be born? In another independent courtyard, He Zhong had also received the news. He let out a long sigh. I only hope Uncle can stop now, although it's impossible. Elder Bai Li is someone that even my master, the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect, is afraid of. Although his master was the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect, he was also an eminent saint stage powerhouse. However, in terms of strength, he was on par with Elder Bai Li at most. This was because Elder Bai Li had an Earth-rank prominent saint weapon that was inscribed with 3-star saint inscriptions. With that saint weapon, Elder Bai Li could fight an eminent saint stage powerhouse even though he was only at the peak of the paramount saint rudiment stage. In the end, He Zhong gritted his teeth and left the outer court district to enter the inner court district. No matter what, Lu Huan was still his uncle. He still planned to persuade him personally. I understand. In the face of He Zhong's kind words, Lu Huan nodded perfunctorily. Although He Zhong could tell Lu Huan was trying to brush him off, he knew this was the best he could do. Uncle, now that Duan Lingtian has become Elder Bai Li's junior brother, I'm afraid even my master wouldn't want to make him his enemy. I know. Lu Huan nodded his head nonchalantly. If there's nothing else, you may leave. He Zhong sighed when he heard Lu Huan's intention to send him off. He could only turn around and leave. No matter what, he had done his best. It was enough for him to answer to his mother who had passed away many years ago. After He Zhong left, Lu Huan smirked coldly. You want me to stop? Impossible. I've already sworn that anyone who comes out of Mound Hill City will either die or become my disciple. There's no exception. Not even Duan Lingtian. 5 days later, an uninvited guest arrived at Lu Huan's mansion. Elder Bai Li, Lu Huan's expression was a little unnatural when he saw the person, but he still bowed politely. Although the person in front of him was also an inner court elder, his position in the Moon Illumination sect was not something he could compare to. Elder Lu Huan. The person who had just arrived was none other than Bai Li Hong, Duan Lingtian's senior brother. I've never been one to beat around the bush. I'm here to remind you that Duan Lingtian is my junior brother. If anyone dares to harm him, it'll be equivalent to slapping my face. Bai Li Hong's tone was calm, but it was overbearing. The relationship between Elder Bai Li and your junior brother is so deep that it's enviable. Lu Huan took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He forced a smile on his face. That's all I have to say. You're on your own now. Bai Li Hong glanced at Lu Huan nonchalantly before he turned around and left. He came and went like the wind, entering and exiting Lu Huan's mansion as though there was no one around. After Bai Li Hong left, Lu Huan's face turned completely grave. He said hatefully, Duan Lingtian, if you don't die, I, Lu Huan, swear that I'm not human. Unless you hide in the Moon Illumination sect forever, I'll make sure you die a graveless death. The moment his words left his mouth, he left his mansion, the inner court, and the Moon Illumination sect. After leaving the Moon Illumination sect, Lu Huan headed north. That direction was the direction of Han River City. Han River City was the biggest city in the 9 Sect Alliance's territory. It was also the most prosperous city. The headquarters of the 9 Sect Alliances was located there. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.